This will be the most important Airbnb video that's ever been created. Probably. Okay, right, this will probably be the best Airbnb video you ever watch in your entire life. Listen, over the past few years, I've spent thousands of hours putting together content that teaches you how to start an Airbnb business. And I genuinely believe it is the best short-term rental content that exists on the internet. Fight me. But let's face it, my YouTube channel is a very non-linear compilation of content that teaches you Airbnb, but not in any structured or formatted way. Every week I release videos of what I'm going through or what my business is facing, or I create videos based on your feedback of what you want to learn about at that point in time. So I have decided to put together this video that will act as the ultimate masterclass for starting, optimizing, and scaling your Airbnb business. You can think of this video as a free course from me to you, because genuinely, and if you watch my channel, I know you know this about me, I believe in putting my best content and education out there for free. That's what my channel's always been about, making short-term rentals accessible to all of you at home. So because this is all free, I have one favor, just one. Hit the like button. If you get value out of this video, show the YouTube machine that you like me and you like this video. Smash the like button and the subscribe button, which I guess makes it two favors. I've already lied to you and we haven't even started the course yet. Help your friend Rob out. It's free and it'll take you less than 2 seconds. Hit the like and subscribe. All right, so now that we've gotten that out the way, let's talk about how this video is actually gonna go. The first section of this video will be a general overview of how to start an Airbnb business. All right, that way we can just get the fundamentals out there. And then every single section after that will punch in on a different concept that I talked about in that video to help you dive even deeper into the fundamentals of starting a short-term rental business. Here's the curriculum for this video so you can see what we're gonna talk about, as well as all of the different timestamps in case you need to skip ahead. And by the way, throughout this video, I am gonna refer to so many guides and handouts and PDFs. I give this stuff out for free. I will leave the link to all of those in the description down below, but you're gonna wanna go and download that first so that you can use those as I'm teaching you for the rest of the video. So let's get into the first section of this video called How to Start an Airbnb Business. In 3, 2, 1, shoo. I'm gonna try to give you as much detail as possible. With that, let's get into step number 1, and that's gonna be setting your goals. So I know that this might seem like very obvious and very like, well, duh, but it's really important to have an understanding of what you want out of a short-term rental, out of an Airbnb, before you get into this wild, wacky marriage. Because here's the deal, if you want to quit your job, or if you want to make supplemental income, or if you just wanna have a property that you own, like let's say that you're, in Austin, and you wanna own a place in Fredericksburg, which is right outside of Austin, and you just want to break even. You just want a free place where you can go and hang out whenever you want. Like, that's a whole different mindset than if you're trying to quit your 9-to-5 job. So try to be realistic with yourself. A lot of people getting into the game want to eventually quit their job, and if that's you, that's totally fine. But the way that you approach short-term rentals is going to be so focused on the cash-on-cash return, whereas if you're trying to buy a place that just kind of makes money, but you're fine with it because you just want to use it personally, and in that case, the return might not really matter all that much to you. And if that's true, then congratulations, like your search criteria is just about to be completely blown open because you're gonna have so many choices when you're not tied to that cash on cash metric. Whereas if you're trying to make supplemental income, quit your job, you have to really go through your investments with a fine-tooth comb. So I'm honestly trying to decide if like fine-tooth comb was the correct thing to say in that moment, but I legitimately don't remember what the last thing I said was. So we're gonna move on to step number 2 here, which is gonna be to nail down your strategy. Now, when I say nail down your strategy, here's what I mean. There are so many ways that you can approach Airbnb. You can house hack, where you buy a house and rent out rooms in your house or bonus spaces in your house, or maybe an ADU, and you use that money to subsidize your mortgage. You can also do rental arbitrage, which I talked about a week or 2 ago. Don't really know when this video is coming out. And that's where you go and you lease an apartment and then you go and sublease it on Airbnb. Or you can go and buy a second home property with the intention of completely cash flowing, or you can go the glamping route, or you can go the duplex route. I mean, there are so many different strategies that you can implement with Airbnb, and this is honestly one of my favorite things about Airbnb specifically, is that there are so many entry points for every single person out there. No matter what your budget is, no matter what your credentials are, there's always a way to break into the game. And so if you're interested in learning about the top 5 business models within the Airbnb industry, I've made this handy dandy little PDF right here that kind of walks you through my POV and what I like about each of them. And by the way, throughout this entire video, I'm going to be linking out to different spreadsheets and handouts, so you can download all of those for free, and I would highly suggest doing it because it's going to help you on your journey to finally starting your Airbnb business if you've been putting it off up until this video. Okay, so you've decided between maybe renting out a room in your house or buying a house or rental arbitrage or whatever. Once you've done that, you're gonna do something else. Right, you're gonna get pre-approved. All right, so this is actually really, really important. So this is something I really want you to do as early as possible. And just in case you don't really know what I mean here, what this means is going to a bank and filling out an application and seeing what you qualify for from a home purchase perspective. Because basically, if you don't know what you can qualify for, then you're gonna be wasting a lot of time. So if you make $40,000 a year, but you're $60,000 in student debt and your debt to income ratio is shot, like mine was when I got out of college, you're not really gonna be able to qualify for a very big mortgage. That's gonna really dictate, the rest of the steps that we're gonna be talking about today. So you really need to get an understanding from your mortgage broker about what you can actually qualify for. And just a heads up here, most of the time when you're getting qualified conventionally from a mortgage broker, they wanna see a DTI, meaning a debt to income ratio, no more than the 40 to 45% range. So here's how a debt to income ratio works. If you make $10,000 a month, but your debt is $4,000 a month, let's say it's $2,000 a month on credit cards and $2,000 a month in student loan payments, like me when I was getting out of college. That's $4,000 divided by $10,000. That means you have a 40% debt to income ratio. So in that circumstance, a bank, depending on where they fall in that 40 to 45% range, really isn't gonna lend me much, if anything at all. Now to give you another example, let's say that I had $2,000 in debt and the house that I wanted to buy was $3,000 a month. That would put me at $5,000 a month, or a 50% debt to income ratio, and a bank would more than likely send me an email that says, "Dear Robertito, you are too poor, we are not gonna lend on this loan." Go find a good mortgage broker to answer all of your questions. I like one brokerage a lot, it's David Green's firm. I'll leave a link down in the description for you if you wanna connect with them. So that was probably too much of a tangent, but personally I think it's very important to understand the mechanics of what it takes to qualify for a loan, and this is why I want you to get pre-approved as soon as possible, because as soon as you have that pre-approval amount, then you can actually go out and make an offer. You can't really go out and make an offer on a house without a pre-approval letter, and you're gonna want that anyways, because what you're pre-approved for is really gonna guide you in step 4 here, which is picking a market. And the reason being is that if you're approved for $200,000, then you're probably not gonna wanna set your sights on Los Angeles or New York or San Francisco. You might have to stay in the Midwest or some parts of Texas or so many other places in the country, but effectively it helps you understand where you can and can't buy. So when you're picking a market, there are 4 different places that I'm always looking at. I like national parks, state parks, eclectic cities, and vacation destinations. So national parks and state parks, for the most part, I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory, but just in case you don't know, Caleb, leave the definition somewhere on here. When I say eclectic city, what I mean is it's usually a city that's in between 2 cities, or it's a city that is right outside of a very popular destination. Eureka Springs would be a really great example of this. Very eclectic town, has a draw to it, people are always going to it. It's got like cute shops and great restaurants and everything like that. Julian outside of San Diego, Fredericksburg outside of Austin, like those types of places. Places that for whatever reason, people just love visiting. Vacation destinations would be like beach towns, mountain towns, lake towns, anything like that, or tourist towns like Hollywood or Orlando, home of Disneyland and Disney World, which is allegedly the happiest place on earth. But let me tell you, I've gone with 2 kids. It was far from a happy time. Have you ever gone to, it's like they pitch you on this idea that it's gonna be all magical and you're gonna be on boats and you're gonna be singing songs with freaking Mickey Mouse, but really it's like you're finding like whatever food you can to give your kids. It's like some kind of fried food or some like $18 sandwich, and then it's like, noon comes around and you have to decide, do we stay here or do we go home because it's about to be nap time? And if we miss nap time, all hell will break loose for the rest of the day after we get home. However, why would we want to leave at 11 a.m. or 12 p.m.? We spent $139 per ticket. It's literally like $300 or $400 just to have gotten to this point, and the tickets were $300, but the parking at Disneyland was $500. So what are we gonna do? So anyways, when you're picking a market, you really have to ask yourself why. Why do you want to invest here? Do you want to invest here because you heard Rob Built casually mention it in this video? I wouldn't do that because I was just grasping for straws here on the moment. Do you want to invest in a market because you personally have been there, you like it, you've been a tourist there, and the idea of getting to visit it every so often as the owner of a house in that market makes you excited? Then yeah, okay, great. That might be an option. Do you want to invest there because you have friends, family there, or a random cousin who's willing to be the boots on the ground? Awesome. Do you want to invest there because you've done a little bit of research and you found out that that particular city is on the rise for short-term rentals and it's going to be appreciating like crazy over the next 10 years? Whatever reason it is, I just want you to have a why. I want you to pick the reason yourself. I have a lot of students in host camp and a lot of people reach out like daily that's like, should I invest here? Where should I invest? And I'm like, wherever you want to invest that makes sense for you. My job isn't to just handpick markets for you. My job is to help you choose markets and understand why that market might be a good idea and how to analyze that market and see if it's a great investment. Also, when you're picking a market, it would be very ideal if you ran an audit, okay? So go to Redfin, Trulia, Zillow, Realtor.com, wherever you want to go, and just start looking at houses and see what they cost there, right? So we have a general understanding at this point what you're pre-approved for. Let's say it's $350,000. Now I want you to go into that city on Redfin, and I want you to put a max of $350,000, and I want you to see what that actually buys you. Is it buying you a decent house in a decent neighborhood, or is it buying you kind of a crummy place, and so thus maybe it's a better idea to go and find a different market? You know, you have to go and run an audit and understand how far your money will go in that city. And then while you're running your audit, I want you to go and research the short-term rental laws and regulations and see if Airbnb is even legal there. Because you never really know. A city could be totally for it or totally against it. Either way, you're gonna have to do a little bit of research. Moving on to step 5 here, and I'm pretty sure I didn't even say steps 1 through 3. I just started at 4. This is step 5. Once you've picked your market, you're gonna move into finding a realtor. This is really one of the more actionable and tangible steps that you can take. First really big one being getting pre-approved, and then finding a realtor. And with these 2 steps, you can literally go out and make an offer. Now I want you to go out and do everything that I'm showing you here, but finding a realtor is very important. And ideally you wanna find a realtor that understands short-term rentals. I usually call realtors and I interview them a bit and I throw them softballs and curveballs and I'm like, yeah, so do you invest? Do you know what Airbnb is? And if they're like, yeah, I think I've heard of it. And I'm always like, yeah, okay, thanks for your time. Ugh! How do you not know what Airbnb is?
Hey, right back at you, bitch.
No, I'm just kidding. Well, if they don't know what Airbnb is, then I'm probably not gonna use them, okay? So it's very important that you find a realtor that at least understands like the concept and like the perimeters. If they're an actual investor themselves, or if they know people with Airbnbs, this is just gonna be really huge because they may then be able to actually give you anecdotal evidence or POVs or insights into the actual market that you're trying to buy in. However you decide to find your realtor, it's very important that that realtor gets you on a list. And what I mean by a list is they get you on an auto-generated list that fits your particular criteria, the bath count, bed count, square footage, price, whatever that is. And then anytime a home within that criteria hits the market, it'll automatically send you that listing to your email. Okay, step 6 here, I want you to spy on your competition. What I mean by this is I want you to go to Airbnb and start looking at the neighborhoods that you're interested in buying in and start just doing a competitive audit on how well your competition's doing. So let's just say that you find a specific neighborhood and you're interested in buying a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. Go into the Airbnb filters, put in 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and take a look at all the listings that pop up that might be similar to yours. And start just looking at their interior design. Generally speaking, in this neighborhood, are people pretty good at interior design? Do they have great listing copy? Do they have great photos? Everyone in this neighborhood just a complete design nerd, and you're not really much of a design nerd, and maybe you can't compete with all the awesome hosts in this neighborhood, so thus maybe you want to invest in a different neighborhood? Or does everyone suck? You know, this happens all the time. Did people take photos of their listing with the potato phone, and thus all you have to do is come in and take professional photos and just buy furniture that's not from Goodwill? And if you do those 2 things, you could be the king or queen of that neighborhood, right? So doing a little bit of research, spying on the competition, seeing how well they're doing, looking at their calendar, seeing how booked out they are, how much money they're making. This is gonna be really, really helpful for you in determining if this is an area you wanna invest in. Step number 7. Okay, we're going to speak about step number 7 in this whole entire process. Still deciding what accent that was. But step number 7 is analyze your deals, okay? I'm not really gonna go into super detail into this because I actually have an entire video that's overlaid over my face right now where I actually go super in depth on how to analyze. I'm just realizing that this is a very awkward way to hold my hands. But what I want you to take away from this step in this video is that I think that you should really learn and master the art of comping Airbnb deals, okay? When I say comping, I mean pulling up comps, seeing how your competition is doing. To me, this is by far the most important skill you can have as an Airbnb investor, host, entrepreneur. I really do hammer this process over and over and over again in host camp, really just drill this into my students' head, like how to do this, because it can make or break the deal, right? It can really determine if your deal is a 10%, a 20%, a 30, or 40. I had someone that came to me with a 50% cash on cash deal and they said, do you want to partner on this? I was like, heck yeah. But then I ran the deal with them and it ended up actually being like a 10 to 15, maybe a 20 in a perfect world. And I just walked through the process with them. And I was like, you're missing this expense, this expense, this expense. Have you looked at this? Have you seen that your competition is doing this and and you don't have this, right? So it's like a whole process that it's very nuanced, and it's very important to just sharpen the skill as much as possible. Again, my other video on analyzing Airbnb really goes into depth here, but I want you to do this 30, 40, 50 times. I want you to do it 10 times a day, 20 times a day, until you're comfortable enough to make your first offer. Boom, you've analyzed the deal. You're ready to go. You found a cutie, you found a little croissant. Boom, you've analyzed 50 deals. You finally found the one. You said, Rob, I've done it. I've found the one that comps out at 21%, but if I really knock it out of the park, it's gonna be at 25 or 30%. Now what? Okay, this part is crazy, all right? So just write this down. You're gonna make an offer. Oh, what? I'm gonna make but it's so scary. It's becoming real, Rob. It is becoming real. And here's the cool thing. Making an offer is pretty easy. Your realtor really does all the work, and then you sign the paper, right? Make sure that you understand the terms, make sure that you understand the contract, that your realtor explains that to you. And I'm not saying go out and make willy-nilly offers, but if you go and you make an offer and it gets accepted, there are certain opportunities for you to walk away and still get your earnest money back. Now, understand what your contract says. It's gonna be very specific to your state, but it's not like if you make an offer, that's it, you have to buy it. You have to buy it right then and there. I walk away from deals that I'm in escrow on all the time. It's not because I want to, but it's because maybe I uncover something during due diligence, maybe the inspection came back bad, maybe the appraisal was right under, and I was able to walk away from those deals, and I was still able to get all my earnest money back because I had things in my contract that allowed me to walk away from the deal. So let's just say that you make an offer and it all goes super well, inspections were great, you negotiated with the seller, maybe appraisal came in just a hair higher than the offer that you put in, and all is good and great. Should take you about 45 to 90 days to close on the loan, sometimes sooner. We actually made an offer on a place last week, and we're actually getting funded on it in like the next week or two. Super fast, gonna probably be the fastest loan that I've ever closed. And then I've also had stuff that's gone out like 120 days. So just be prepared here and just understand that your mileage may vary. Moving on to step number 9 here. I don't even know if I said step 8 on the last one, but no, it doesn't matter. Step number 9 here is gonna be to remodel and furnish. Now you may not be remodeling at all, but maybe your place needs a little TLC, a little tickle, a little laugh, and a little cuddling. You might need to go paint the walls or rip out the carpet or change out countertops or remove bodies from inside the wall, like whatever that ends up being. Set your budget from the beginning and make sure that it falls within your overall budget and however much cash you have in your bank account, and that you're comfortable with making the investment in your remodel. Now for me, when I'm seeking out Airbnbs, for the most part, I'm trying to spend like $5,000 to $10,000 on remodels max. I'm trying to get more turnkey houses these days because I just don't have the time to go and put the sweat equity into it. But you starting out, for you to get a really great deal, you might have to go and do a little value add. So you just have to factor that into your budget. Then you also have to furnish it. Now furnishing is its own topic as well, and I have an awesome video on this. This is actually one of my favorite videos I've ever done, and I think it's a crowd favorite too. It just walks you through the entire philosophy of furnishing your place, okay? But since I cover this in depth in this video, I'm gonna keep moving on here. But I will say that you wanna budget about $10 a square foot minimum to furnish your place. So if it's a 2,000 square foot place, it's gonna cost you about $20,000 to furnish. Now for me, I do have some bougie champagne taste, so I'm usually gonna be in that $10,000 to $15,000 range. So if it's $15 a square foot and it's a 2,000 square foot place, it could easily cost me $30,000 to furnish it. Most of the time I'm falling in between though. But if you want help staying in that $10 per square foot range, I have a full furniture list, like literally everything you could possibly buy, everything you possibly need for an Airbnb. Put it together in a free PDF, you can have that too. All you have to do, click, add to cart, buy. I've done all the hard work for you. It took me many hours to put this list together, but I use it for all of my Airbnbs. So go forth, get those credit card points, furnish your Airbnb, and you know, you're welcome. That's it, you're welcome. After you've done light renovations or you remodeled it and you furnished it, the place is ready. It's ready to go. Oh my gosh, we did it. We made the offer. We closed the place. We've remodeled it. We furnished it. We're to the finish line, right, Rob? Well, not really. Not quite to my tempo, no. Honestly, I think if you've analyzed it, you've gotten it under escrow, you've closed on the house, hard part, it's not over, but like half of the hard part is like done. But now we're moving more into the Airbnb side of things, okay? So once it's furnished, you're gonna hire a professional photographer. I cannot tell you how frustrating it is when people ask me to review their listing or give them feedback or advice on their Airbnb listing, and the photos that they've taken on said listing was taken on the freaking BlackBerry from 1993. And I'm like, dude, why would you spend $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 on furniture and $40,000 to $150,000 on a down payment, but you won't spend $150,000 to $800 on photography to make your place sing. Oh, that was stupid. Oh, I hate that that's even in here. Well, to be fair, it is like 10:45 at night. Haven't recorded a video this late. It's been a while. Moving on. Hire a professional photographer. I mean, really, if there's one thing you take away from this video, please just pay like $500 for a photographer. I promise you that my ear itches, and I also promise you, all right, that it's worth it. I promise you that if you have great photography, it's gonna pay for itself over and over and over again. There was one time I took cell phone photos and then I replaced them with real professional photos. And then literally like that same day, I got 4 requests, and then the request that I took turned out to be a $10,000 request over 3 months. You just cannot beat the ROI on great photos. A lot of my listings are in Southern California. If you're in the Southern California area, I highly recommend my good friend Barker Studios. He has literally, like, I attribute a lot of my YouTube success to him.
I'm gonna settle down.
No way.
Get in the back, please.
Boo.
Boo.
He took this photo of Conejo, which was the thumbnail for the first YouTube video of mine that ever just went truly viral and just completely blew up. And then my whole platform grew as a result of it. Now, obviously, I think the video was probably pretty good too, but I mean, a good photo could be a reason you cry or smile or laugh about a memory, or the reason you click on a YouTube video like my thumbnail videos, or the reason you spend thousands of dollars to book an Airbnb, or the reason why someone else spends thousands of dollars, if not tens of thousands of dollars, on your Airbnb. So really just spend the money here, okay? Or else I'm not gonna let you watch this channel anymore. Anyway, moving on to step number 11, once you have your pro photos, guess what you can do? You can actually make your listing. Make your listing on Airbnb, okay? Upload those photos, write good listing copy. This is more important than ever with all the Airbnb changes and the redesign of their website. Get those keywords in there that really will help you rank for all the different categories on the Airbnb website. And yeah, just like put a lot of time and energy into making sure that you razzle dazzle people with your Airbnb listing. And guess what? I have 5 amazing tips for you in a handy dandy PDF. What? You have so many PDFs, Rob? Yeah, you're welcome. I make these to help people because I just want to see you succeed. So you can download that for free, and it'll give you my top tips, which was actually my nickname back in high school. Anyways, it'll give you all my top tips on how to have a great Airbnb listing. And while we're at it, since you're here, if you sign up with my Airbnb link, you'll actually get $75 when you host your first stay on Airbnb. And guess what? I'll get to be your Airbnb ambassador. Isn't that cool? We'll be connected in a cool, small little way, and you get 75 bucks, of which I'll expect you to Venmo me half because, I mean, it was free money anyway, so it shouldn't really be a big deal for you to give me half, or honestly 90% of it, because if you still took 10% of it, that's $750 that you wouldn't have made either way. So anyways, I'm getting tired. We're gonna wrap this thing up. Well, kind of. Shoot. We got so much to go. I was like, I'm gonna knock this out in like 45 minutes, but when you're wrong, you're wrong. Okay, I have these broken out into 2 different steps, but I think I can kind of combine them. We'll just say steps 12 and 13 is setting your pricing strategy and setting your automations. Now with your pricing strategy, it's gonna take a while to perfect this. It usually takes me about 3 months to really settle on how much I'm actually charging for my Airbnb. Typically, starting off small, as I gain more reviews, I increase the price, and I use an automated pricing software called Price Labs, which is basically dynamic pricing. This means that depending on the market supply or demand on any given day, they have a very fancy schmancy, very smart algorithm. It determines the best price point for my place compared to all of my competitors. And that's honestly relatively inexpensive, and it's completely automated. Step 13 is gonna be setting your automations. For setting automations, I really like Guesty for hosts. And when I say setting automations, I mean automating my communication, like all of my messages, so that whenever someone books my place, I don't have to send them a message that says, hey, thanks for booking my place. I have a software service that sends that out, or they'll send them check-in instructions or checkout instructions on my behalf, and it helps make Airbnb a little bit more of a passive investment for me. You can also automate all the scheduling with your cleaners. You can also automate leaving reviews for your guests and asking for reviews. There's so many things that you can automate these days that really, I mean, it makes your job as an Airbnb host a lot easier. Again, I use Guesty for hosts. That's ideal for people that have 4 or less listings. If you have more than 4 listings, they have a fancier version called Guesty for pros. Ooh, speak of the devil, I just got a $985.52 inquiry on Airbnb. Okay, step 14, after you've set all your automations, you're gonna assemble your dream team. This is gonna be hiring your cleaner, making sure that you can find someone trustworthy that's gonna show up, make sure that it's clean by 4 p.m. when your guests are checking in. You're gonna hire your handyman, very important person that you're gonna wanna have on your roster because they're gonna come and fix things when they break. Ideally, the cleaners communicate with the handyman and they can help automate that further for you. A lot of the times I've gotten really lucky, and my cleaners have actually been married to my handyman, and that's really the the greatest situation ever, but that's probably not gonna be the case for you. So just find someone that's reliable. It's nice to have a roster of people that you can just call because handymen don't always answer. So if you could have like 2, maybe 3, then you'll always have someone that you can call. You'll also need to hire pest control because we don't like roaches or mice in our Airbnbs. I've had it all. I even had a bed bug like 2 weeks ago, and then it turned out that it wasn't a bed bug, it was a bat bug. We spent $1,200 on the wrong procedure because we didn't even have bed bugs. Oh man, it was a whole thing. It was a whole thing. Outside of pest control, a good contractor would be someone to have on call too. Pool service and lawn service. That's your Airbnb Avengers. So to recap, cleaner, handyman, contractor, pool service, lawn service, and pest control. So that's 6 people. I mean, the pool service, obviously, like you don't want like a hot pool guy if you don't have a pool. Well, actually, maybe you do. I'm not here to judge. Anyway, that's gonna be your dream team. Interview them, you know, really put them through the ringer, like ask them questions and see what their process is and how they do things. The cleaner out of all these is the most important though. So, but really I try not to negotiate with cleaners too much. Whatever rate they say, for the most part, I'm gonna pay it because a happy cleaner will leave your place cleaner and thus make you more money because you're gonna have better reviews and people booking your place more because the reviews are good. And once you found your golden unicorn cleaner, you can get them all set up on CoKeeper to go that extra mile to make sure that your place is being perfectly maintained and well kept and well cleaned. Oh, we've done it. We've gotten to the last step, which it's like not really, but for the sake of this video, it's the last step. And this is gonna be operate and optimize, okay? You've listed it, you've gotten the professional cleaners, you have your dream team. Now it's time to launch, like go live. It's not gonna be perfect, all right? You're gonna have a couple of hiccups, might have some failures, you might have some wrinkles that you have to iron out. The first 3 months of your listing are so crucial because this is where you're gonna be really just optimizing everything. You're gonna be leaning on your guests to tell you what wasn't perfect, and it's gonna be on you to correct those things, okay? So a lot of people try to launch with a very perfect Airbnb. It's just not gonna happen. You're gonna miss something. I miss stuff all the time, all right? I'm very honest about this on the channel. Like, I mess up all the time, guys. The reason I can come onto YouTube confidently and then teach all my students confidently is just because I've done this for so long that, yeah, I still make mistakes, but I learn from them very quick. A bad host never learns from a mistake. A good host is happy to have made the mistake so that they'll never make the mistake again. Embrace failure, my friends. It's fine. It's fine to fail because we do not become Airbnb experts from everything going right. We become Airbnb experts from everything going wrong, and then we learn from it and we get better, okay? So operate, fail, make mistakes, optimize, and if you do that, you're gonna be just fine. All right, take a small break, breathe a little bit. I know that was a lot. That was how to start an Airbnb business. That is the general overview of the business model. And now that you have a general understanding of how it all works, we are now gonna start diving into some of the key concepts that you need to know to actually start. So this next section is called the 5 Airbnb business models that you need to know to get started today. And my hope for this section is that it gives you a ton of ideas and it gets the wheels turning and the creative juices flowing over all of the different ways that you can actually break into this business, which, spoiler alert, there are a lot. So let's get into it. We got this. We good. Let's do this again. Wah, wah, wah. Welcome back to another episode of Rob Built. I'm your host, Rob. Today, we're gonna be, I don't know. Let me check my outline real fast. Huh. Yeah. All right. So you want to get into the Airbnb business.
Well, too bad! It's too late!
Oh my God, Susan, I kid! There are so many ways that you can break into the Airbnb business, and today I'm gonna give you 5 Airbnb / short-term rental business models that you can get into. We're gonna be talking about the pros, the cons, and the costs associated with each model. All in this video, which is actually the second installment of my Airbnb series that's gonna be going on all this month. By the way, in case you're wondering, it's currently 1:54 p.m. New milestone. I'm recording during the day and I'm feeling mighty fine, people. So with that, let's talk about the top 5 Airbnb business models. And of course, I've compiled it in this cutie little PDF right here that you can download in the description below. And of course, as always, if this inspires you to become an Airbnb host, be sure to sign up with my link down below so that you get $75 when you host your first stay. So first one here is going to be renting your house. This is probably the most common form of Airbnb, probably what you've heard about. But effectively, you can buy a house and turn it into an entire Airbnb business as little as 30 days after you close. Usually after I close, I try to get my Airbnbs running within the next week or two just because time is money and every day that you're not renting your Airbnb is another day that you're not making money. There are a few different ways and loan types that you can pursue whenever you're thinking about buying an Airbnb property, and I'm going to talk about the different loan types. Not a mortgage broker, don't legally hold me to anything. Contact your mortgage broker because they're way more qualified than me. Depending on which loan type you go with, you can put down anywhere from 3.5% to 20%. And this will vary depending on if you go with an FHA loan, a conventional loan, a second home / vacation home, or an investment property. They all have their own nuances and specific lending criteria, so definitely get with your mortgage broker for some of the more nitty-gritty details. For example, on an FHA loan, you can put down 3.5%. However, that has to be your primary home that you live in. So if you're gonna pursue that option, that would really only work for a house hack, which we'll get into the next model here, or if you were renting it for a weekend while you were out of town or something like that. Then you can go the second home / vacation home route if you want, and that would require a 10% down payment. Now, a lot of the times people might have a second home that's just collecting dust 10 months out of the year, or they only get to use it for 2 months. Or you might be itching to buy a vacation home in the Smoky Mountains, or in Joshua Tree, or in Big Bear, or in Mammoth, or Scottsdale, or insert whatever city that you love to travel to and you want to own a home there, but you can't really quite justify a monthly mortgage on it because you're not there enough. In those instances, you might consider a vacation home because you can use Airbnb to not only subsidize your mortgage, but actually make money doing it too. And then you can go full on investment loan, and that can cost you anywhere from 15 to 20% down. I've even seen it up to 25% down. Now, to put some numbers to this, if you were going to acquire a $300,000 house, that would cost you anywhere from $10,500 to $60,000, and that would be dependent on if your down payment was anywhere from 3.5% to 20%. On a $400,000 house, you'd be looking at a down payment between $14,000 and $80,000. And on a $500,000 house, you'd be looking at anywhere from $17,500 all the way up to $100,000 as a down payment. What I like about this is that there's a loan type for pretty much anyone who has some cash saved up with a pretty low debt to income ratio. But regardless, make sure that you talk to your mortgage broker and that you're adhering to their guidelines. So second business model. My microphone on. Whoo! Oh, I've recorded without my microphone being on way too many times. And it's on. If you're hearing me talk right now, it's on. Second Airbnb business model type is a house hack, and this is one of my favorites, mostly because I feel that my first house hack was the catalyst for all of my financial success. So let's back up a bit. What is a house hack? A house hack is basically when you own a home and you rent out a part of that house. It could be a guest bedroom, it could be both of your guest bedrooms, a den, a bonus space. I've even seen someone rent out a Tesla in their garage, but you rent out these spaces to help subsidize your mortgage. So to put this very simply, let's say that you own a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house and your mortgage is $1,000. And I'm just going off the first house that I ever owned, which was $159,000. Well, you would live in one room and you could rent out the other 2 rooms for say $400 a piece. 400 times 2 is $800. Yep, it's $800. Yep, it's $800. That would be $800 that you could apply to your mortgage, meaning you'd be out of pocket $200 to own your house. Now, these numbers that I'm throwing out are in reference to a long-term rental if you were renting it out to an actual tenant or a roommate, which was what I was doing when I first started out. This was before I ever knew about Airbnb, so let's run another simulation here. Let's say that you really wanted to supercharge the house hack model. Well, if you wanted to, you could then list both of those rooms on Airbnb. Let's say you wanted to start small and list one of those rooms on Airbnb at $50 a night. If you rented that room for $50 a day and you were able to book it for all 30 nights in the month, that would be $1,500 that you made on one room. That's right, not only would you pay your $1,000 mortgage, but you would make $500 doing this. Now let's say you got all brave and you wanted to rent the other room and you were able to book that for the entire month. That's another $1,500, so $3,000 total, $1,000 mortgage, you would be making $2,000 in a perfect month. But Rob, no one ever has perfect months, you're just inflating the numbers, blah. Yeah, I get it. I'm just giving you the best case scenario. I know plenty of hosts, and I mean plenty of hosts that have done this, who have perfect months all the time. I've had so many perfect months in my Airbnb career. But let's just say that you were able to rent both rooms at an occupancy of 60%. We would multiply the perfect scenario, $3,000 times 0.6, and that's $1,800, which is perfectly reasonable. So even with the relatively lower occupancy rate, you can still pay your mortgage and make $800, and then you gotta account for your expenses like toilet paper, paper towels, extra utilities, that kind of stuff. And honestly, what I like the most about house hacking is that I think anybody can do it. So many people come to me and ask me and they say, Rob, I wanna get into real estate, but I don't have any money, I can't buy a house. And then I say, well, do you own a house? And they're like, well, yeah. And I'm like, house hack. I mean, duh. This is what I recommend to anyone that owns a house that may not have enough money or borrowing power to acquire a new home. You can get creative with this. You can put an RV on your driveway. You can convert a garage into a studio space, or you can do what I did and build like a tiny house or a guest suite or some kind of guest house in your backyard. There are so many ways that you can get into a house hack, and because it's your primary residence, you could get in for as little as 3.5% down. I have seen a lot of people that have gone out and bought duplexes, Airbnb that duplex, paid off their mortgage, and made thousands of dollars that same month. Even in my personal personal house hack. When I was living in LA, I had a studio apartment under my house, which was renting for $1,500 a month. I had my tiny house in my backyard, which can average out to about $2,500 a month. So that right there is $4,000. My mortgage is $4,200. So for $200 out of pocket, I almost get to live in my $1.2 million Los Angeles home for free. And since I started house hacking that house, I've made between $160,000 to $180,000 in rents. House hacking is already very powerful, but when you plus it up with Airbnb, the sky's the limit. Airbnb business model number 3, glamping. Also known as glamorous camping, which basically means that it's an elevated camping experience. So instead of freezing out in Mother Nature in a thin vinyl tent, or digging a hole in the ground and pooping in it, and then covering it back up, you get to rent a very luxurious or premium canvas tent or vintage Airstream or tiny house on wheels or A-frame or yurt, and you get to rough it in Mother Nature on memory foam mattresses, and you get a mini fridge and maybe solar panels to charge your precious phones. You can set up these experiences for people, and guess what? You can charge anywhere from $150 to $400 a night. In fact, this tent grossed $5,360.73. As you can see, I had a pretty booked July. Our profit margin on this is usually 65%. So on this property, our profit last month would have been $3,484. There are so many fun, cool ways that you can curate and put together this experience for people. And it's not just me. There are so many people killing it with this business model, like my student right here, who made $10,880 in July on a couple of tents as well. I'm just a proud dad over here. There are so many ways that you can launch your Airbnb glamping business. You can acquire land if you want to do that. If you already own a house, you could put an Airstream in your driveway or a tent in your backyard. I've seen people do that and make thousands of dollars that way. Or you might even have a family member that already owns land. You can even lease land from someone and pay them to manage it for you. That's one of my favorite and main business models. The glamping business model, if you're looking to stay scrappy and you want to start small, can cost you anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 to get started. I have a whole glamping series that gets into all this stuff that you can watch after this. Watch this video and then you can go watch that after. But all to say, $10,000 to $20,000 is that starting point. You can spend as much as you want after that. I'm about to spend about $63,000 on 2 dome setups, and I'm going to charge anywhere from $200 to $350 a night, hoping for an 8-month payback on that. But you don't have to start there. You can start small, I promise. And don't forget, I've compiled these 5 business models in this handy dandy little PDF right here that you can download in the description down below. Number 4 Airbnb business model would be rental arbitrage. This is where you lease an apartment, a home, a townhouse, and then you sublease it on Airbnb. This is actually how I got my start. I rented an apartment, I bought a house, and I didn't want to have to break the lease for that apartment complex. So I just listed that apartment on Airbnb, and I was making a profit of $1,000 to $2,000 a month. And I always say that if I lost it all tomorrow, which I hope I don't, I could always start over with the rental arbitrage business model, specifically because it's a low-cost way to get into Airbnb. I know a lot of people that get into rental arbitrage deals for less than $10,000 because they're usually able to approach apartment complexes that are running specials all the time, like no security deposit or a low security deposit or a free first month's rent. To put this into perspective, with my first arbitrage deal, my rent was $1,850 a month. Now, it was a 600 square foot apartment, and a lot of the utilities were included except for water and electricity, which came out to anywhere from $50 to $150 a month. We'll just say $100 to keep it simple, and then I think my internet was like $50. So roughly speaking, it's been a couple of years, my expenses for that apartment were generally about $2,100, sometimes a little bit more. Now, in a slower / average month, this place was booking for $100 to $150 a night, and the location was amazing, the pool was amazing, had great amenities, so I ran at like a 99% occupancy for the most part. So at $125 on a perfect month, I was bringing in $3,750. Minus my expenses of $2,100, I was bringing in about $1,650 on like a pretty good month. Not my best month, not my worst month. Now, I am gonna say that I've had pretty amazing success with my units. I wouldn't necessarily calculate your numbers based on a 100% occupancy. When I'm running the numbers to see if a deal works, I'm typically running my calculations at an 80% occupancy. Now, there are a few caveats with this model that I wanna bring up. If you're gonna run with the rental arbitrage model, then you better 100% get the approval and consent of your landlord. Don't try to sneak one by them. Been there, done that.
You son of a bitch.
It is not worth the risk. Do it the right way. The other thing I want to caveat here is that rental arbitrage is great for building monthly cash flow, but you're not necessarily building wealth. In other words, to put it simply, it can get you rich, but not necessarily wealthy. And you're on a 12-month lease. If your landlord decides to sell the building or that they don't want to renew, then your business for that apartment is over. And I want you to keep that in mind. So I think it's totally fine to start off with rental arbitrage, but I would push you to dump your profits into homes that you can acquire, buy, own, and build equity in over time. All right, we did it. Very last one. The very last Airbnb business business model that you can get started with is co-hosting. Co-hosting is whenever you help another host or property owner manage their property, meaning you'll have access to their Airbnb listing where you can message guests, set pricing, coordinate with the cleaning crew, restock supplies, and everything else that goes along with running an Airbnb business. And this is a great business model because it requires zero money, no money from you at all. In fact, you get paid to do this. You can charge anywhere from a 15 to 30% management fee of gross monthly revenue. So to put this into perspective, if a place was grossing $5,000 and you were charging just 15% of that, then you would make $750. If you were charging a 30% management fee, then you'd be looking at $1,500 a month. Now I know that may not sound like a lot, but imagine you were able to co-host for 5 people. That would be $7,500 on a perfect month. If you had 10 of these going on a perfect month, you'd be looking at $15,000. And I know that sounds crazy, but I know people that make thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars with this co-hosting model. Fun fact, I used to co-host a mansion in Calabasas a couple years ago. I was charging 25% to do that, and I made thousands of dollars doing that, which at the time was game-changing money for me. And that's it. 5 business models to get started in Airbnb. Honestly, this is what I really love about Airbnb, is that I really do think that there's an entry point. There's a way for you to start your business no matter where you are in your financial journey. And don't forget to download this guy, which is a recap of everything that we talked about today. And that's about it. Man, it's 3:52. There's daylight outside. I think I might go for a walk or a bike ride, or I might just go outside and smell the fresh air. So let's get into the nitty gritty here. I wanted to break down what I consider a pretty middle of the road deal for me and kind of analyze what it would cost you to buy a $400,000 house. Take it or leave it, but I think that this is a pretty average price point for most people looking to get into the game. You can plug and play my formula here for a $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 house. It's all relative. Now, I will say that my POV, for me personally, I'm not gonna be acquiring properties that are less than $500,000 these days, and that's for a whole variety of reasons, but typically I'm looking to acquire an Airbnb that's in a really great location or has high bed bath count. So for the most part, I'm looking for Airbnbs these days that have at least 4 bedrooms, but now I'm even narrowing my own criteria here to 5 bedrooms or more, because the more rooms, the more people you're able to sleep, the more people you're able to sleep, the more money you can charge. And so for me, I'm just always chasing higher returns. But with that said, there's no real right or wrong here. Ultimately, it's gonna come down to what you're comfortable with budgetarily. So that's why I wanna start with $400,000 here, because I think that's an achievable price range in many parts of the country. All right, well, if you haven't noticed yet, I'm not in my typical studio because I'm back in California now and all my stuff is in storage. So just jumping out here really quick because the lighting is way better. You're probably gonna hear like 18,000 dogs barking and like cars every 5 seconds because it's LA.
Oh, dude. Tubular.
So let's look at this deal as a home airplane, birds, German Shepherds, ADHD just on fire. So let's examine this deal as a home purchase, and let's talk through the 2 main loan types that you're gonna come across. So there's what's called a second home loan, also known as a vacation rental loan. This only requires 10% down. It also requires that you stay at the property for a portion of the year. So if you wanted to buy a home, but you couldn't justify the yearly expense of a mortgage because you're only there for part of the year, you can list it on Airbnb and not only subsidize the mortgage, but of course, make money. Now, obviously, I'm not a mortgage broker, so talk to your mortgage broker about the different stipulations and everything like that, but that's gonna be one of your main types of loans to acquire a short-term rental, 10% down in that instance. On the flip side of this, you can do an investment loan. This is typically a commercial product, and it's gonna require anywhere from 15 to 20% down. 20% down is definitely the more common of the two, but right now the loan that I'm personally working with is a 15% down. But for simplicity's sake, we're gonna say 10% for a second home loan, and we're gonna say 20% for an investment loan. So assuming you buy a $400,000 property, your down payment with the second home vacation home loan is gonna be about $40,000. Now, if you want the 20% investment loan route, that would be $80,000. And if you use a 15% down investment loan, then that would be $60,000. I guess I could have done that in order in retrospect, but we've come too far to do that now. So your startup cost, just from a down payment perspective, is gonna cost you anywhere from $40,000 to $80,000 on a $400,000 house. So let's jump into my handy dandy spreadsheet here. Before you ask, yes, it is available for download. I'll leave a link in the description down below. And let's just start inputting some of these metrics that we were talking about. So the cost of the house, let's put it as $400,000. And down payment, let's just say we're gonna do a second home loan on that. So our down payment is gonna automatically adjust to $40,000. Now your next set of fees here are gonna be your closing costs. A lot of lenders will do a 1% origination fee, but I have seen it up to 2%. And then you have your escrow and prepayment fee. So this is gonna be if you pay your taxes up front, your property insurance up front, and all that jazz. So typically for me to like estimate this a little bit more accurately, I'm usually putting that at a 3%. Then we're gonna get into remodel. Now usually I allot like $10,000 minimum per property. just because I know that there's gonna be stuff that I wanna do like paint walls, maybe I wanna rip out carpet, maybe I wanna do new granite countertops. Perfect world though, we spend less than $1,000 because I'm usually these days looking for something a little bit more turnkey. Now when you're getting started out, I would definitely recommend to find something that does need a little bit more work where you can add value because you're just getting started. You need to start building equity as soon as you possibly can because you're starting out and every little bit helps. Me, I've got 14 different properties. I make about $25,000 of Airbnb profit every single month. So I've earned the luxury of not having to grind quite as hard as I did when I was first starting out. Then you'll see here I've got what's called a setup fee. Your setup fees are gonna be a couple of things. This is gonna be your flights to get to the property, rental cars, U-Hauls, food, and this is gonna be all your costs associated with going to your Airbnb for a week or two to set it up. And obviously it can start to get up there if you go with your spouse or your business partner. So for me, I'm generally allotting $3,000 at a minimum, and that is if the property is within 8 hours away from where I live. If the property is on a completely different coast, for example, like if I'm in California and I'm buying a place in Destin, Florida, which I currently am, then I would bump that setup fee to about $5,000. And another thing to keep in mind is whenever you're connecting your utilities, you're gonna have different deposits associated with that too. So if I'm looking at a $3,000 setup fee for flights, food, lodging, like all that type of stuff, I would probably allot like another $500 for utility deposits. So we'll go ahead and shift this here to $3,500. And then furnishings are really gonna be the big kicker. I'm typically allotting $10 a square foot at a minimum. That's usually the price point that I advise people to start with. Well, no, not advice. None of this is advice. Not a lawyer, not a mortgage broker, not an advisor of any sorts.
You'll have to excuse my friend. He's a little slow.
Anyway, $10 a square foot is usually what I advise my host camp students to start with. Obviously, if you want to go a little bit more premium like I'm going these days, I can pretty easily spend from $12 to $15 a square foot. I've even spent up to $20 a square foot. So on a mid-range deal here, $400,000, let's say that it's about 2,000 square feet times $10 a square foot, that would cost you roughly $20,000 to furnish. Now again, if you want to stay as close to that $10 a square foot metric I gave you, I'm going to leave my shopping list down below, which I really do think it's pretty budget friendly for anyone starting out. And final thing to keep in mind here will be your legal fees. This will be if you want your attorney to assist you with forming an LLC and transferring your property into the LLC and all that kind of stuff. After doing this several times, this typically comes out to no more than 1,500 bucks. Come on, cars.
Come on, cars.
So you can see here, if we were gonna buy a house for $400,000, after all of our different costs and setup fees and closing costs, down payments, remodel, all that kind of stuff, the cost to start an Airbnb with a vacation home, second home loan would be about $78,000. Now let's walk this up a little bit if you wanted to do an investment loan. So for me, I'm getting 15% investment loans right now. So that's gonna change the down payment to $60,000 like I mentioned earlier. It's gonna cost me $98,000 in this specific instance to start an Airbnb. Now, if we wanted to go full investment loan, which is a lot more expensive and not something I really wanna do, then it's gonna cost me $118,000 to start this, faux Airbnb. And again, if you want my little house buy calculator here, it's free. I'll leave a link for you down below. So, as the sun sets and I lose all light, I guess we'll wrap this up. How much is too much to spend on an Airbnb? Well, sadly, that is a pretty relative question. See, I don't really mind spending $500,000 or $1 million or $1.5 million, which I'm currently doing on a house in Destin, and it's by far the most expensive Airbnb I've ever purchased, because to me, it ultimately comes down to what the return is. See, ultimately, I'm measuring the success of my short-term rental based on a metric called cash-on-cash return. I was gonna spitball what this was, because I do know what it is, and I don't want the sharks coming after me in the comments. So a cash-on-cash return is the rate of return often used in real estate transactions that calculates the cash income earned on the cash invested in a property. So this means that if you invested $100,000 into your property, oh farts, come on, don't do this to me right now. There we go. All right, smart technology. All right. Okay, I'm gonna finish the video. I'm gonna finish the video like this. I don't care. Let me re-white balance this. This is real, guys. This is real life right here. It's so bad that it won't even let me set the the white balance. All right, I don't know white balance it is. So this means that if there's an airplane in the sky and a very bright light in your space, and you invest $100,000 into a property, and in that first property, your cash flow and your profit was $50,000, you would divide that 50,000 by 100,000. Your cash on cash return, can you even see this, would be 0.5, a 50% cash on cash return, which is very, very good. Now my bare minimum is 20%. Like I will not look at a deal that is under a 20% cash on cash return, which is about 2 times the amount that you would get on a long-term rental or anything in the stock market on a normal year.
So for me, a 20% is like my bare minimum, but typically I am looking for deals that are 40, 50, 60, 70%, ideally 50 to 75%. Obviously anything more than that would be great too. That's tougher to find these days. But the reason I'm usually looking for a 50% minimum is because when I'm working with investors and I'm splitting those profits and that cash flow with them, and I need them to have a minimum of a 20%. But there's some other costs associated with those different deals, like I charge a 7% management fee. So after all fees and everything like that, I really need the cash on cash for me personally to be a 50%. Now with that said, I still hate the way I look right now.
God, Melanie, I can't even hear you. It's just noise coming out of an ugly scientist.
Oh, it's so frustrating. So for you, it's really gonna come down to your preference, your investment style. For some people, a 15% return is amazing. I mean, it is, like when you compare it to all other investment types, a 15% is still an absolute win. But when I'm teaching and I'm working with students, I really do want people to hit as close to that 20% minimum as possible. So my philosophy these days is I spend more. It's usually gonna equate to a higher return. And the thing that I'm really thankful about with my short-term rental journey is that things are going so well for me, and I've got such a well-diversified portfolio that pays out pretty well. I can spend more and take way bigger risks than I used to when I was first starting out. For example, I'm buying a place in Destin, Florida for $1.4 million. I know I said 1.5 earlier, but I am doing some remodeling. I'm gonna be spending a lot of money on the furniture. That's really scary, even for me. I mean, I know what I'm doing, I'm an expert, but $1.4 million is like, you know, even for someone at my level, it's like a scary investment. However, after running all my analysis and my comps and everything like that, at a minimum, it should gross $200,000 to $220,000. After I'm done with it and fixing it up and doing all the different things that I wanna do in that Airbnb, I'm hoping to be closer to $300,000 of gross revenue every single year. And that, friends, is life-changing money. One final thing that I forgot to mention earlier was my photography cost. I typically spend between $300 to $500 on that. I just lump that into my furnishing budget or my setup cost. I don't have my own line item for that, but just keep that in mind. But that's it. That's how much it costs to start an Airbnb. Adjust accordingly, use my spreadsheet, calculate what it would cost to start a $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 plus Airbnb, and make the numbers work for you. Run your numbers, run them again, and really ask yourself if it's something you can afford. The last thing I want is for you to get into an investment that you can't afford. So basically, here's what we're doing. I have not cherry-picked any of these deals. I'm having them sent to me so I can have a blind, unbiased perspective. So we're gonna analyze a few properties here pretty quickly. Just know that just because I'm analyzing like these, they're random, all right? So I'm not saying like invest in these towns, like don't feel like, oh my gosh, he's giving us a hint here. It's a secret. Just completely random from all over the country. Okay, got it, cool? If you're watching this far, you like the content, I think. Why don't you analyze the like button down below by clicking it and turning it blue. All right, thanks. All right, let's hop in. So many of y'all know that I have a little fancy schmancy model here, and this is really what I use to analyze most of my properties. It is available to download for free. So this is basically where I input all of my data. It's this easy. You don't have to overcomplicate it. I mean, again, there's no right or wrong here. Everyone has their own personal preference and style for analyzing a deal. I've used this spreadsheet thousands of times, and it works just fine. Okay, so let's take a look at this guy. So this is in Tobyhanna, Pennsylvania. All right, a bit of a cutie here, a little bit of a, I don't know what you would describe this style, just craftsman, two-door, I don't know. Okay, so for the most part, I would probably not remodel a place like this. I think they've obviously done things throughout the years. I like the marble countertops. You know, for the cabinets, obviously, like they could be nicer, but I also wouldn't drop $10,000 on a kitchen remodel on a place like this, just given the price point. So for the most part, I would say, what is that? I would say, what is that? Oh, that's their kitchen counter. Okay, I would change that for sure. All right, so barring that kitchen countertop, I would pretty much keep everything the same. The only thing that I might do on a place like this is paint the walls. Not my style of bathroom, but a good, you know, shower curtain could probably cover something like that up. Paint the exterior of the house. So let's take a look here. It's white, and honestly, a good power wash if you just want to like save cash. So minimal fixing on a place like this, and that's really what I'm looking at whenever I'm deciding on an Airbnb property. I am willing to do a little bit of work, but I don't want to do too much work. I don't want to go into a full flip necessarily. There's a lot of money or a lot of value to add, and it's going to be like a six-figure, you know, value add. Then sure, I might consider it. But for the most part, especially at this price point of $285,000, I'm trying to spend as little as possible to get this Airbnb up and running. So for me, what I'm looking at in my scope, I want to do things that are very light. So this will be painting walls, painting the house, changing the floors, and that is about it. I don't want to do a kitchen or a bathroom remodel. For the most part, I'll skimp out on the bathroom. I'll just put like a shower curtain to cover up like an ugly shower. I try to spend less than $15,000 on a deal. Now I will say that I get a lot more in-depth and nitty-gritty into these concepts in Host Camp, and I actually show you like number for number how I'm doing this. But I wanted to give you a quick overview of how I'm using the AirDNA platform to really level up how I analyze properties. So next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna actually pop this property into AirDNA. So basically what you're gonna do here is you're gonna pop in the address, and then you're gonna make sure that the bedroom and bath count is correct. So we can see here on Zillow that it is a 4-4 and it's 2,200 square feet. So my rule here is that I'm willing to put at a minimum, mostly maximum, 2 people per bedroom. So that's like 2 beds, 2 people per bath. So right there, that's gonna tell you if there's 4 bedrooms, I can put a minimum of 8 people in that house, especially if it's 2,200 square feet. But my other rule to counterbalance this, to make sure that there's like a quality to your short-term stay, is that I only let a maximum of 5 people per bathroom stay. So that means if there's 4 bathrooms, then a maximum of 20 people could theoretically stay in that short-term rental. However, as you can see, this short-term rental is 2,200 square feet. So we know that 20 people can't fit there. So for the most part, I would say this place can hold a minimum of 8 people, but probably a maximum of 12. Now, every single space is different, so obviously your mileage may vary. So like I said here, we're gonna go 4 bedrooms, minimum of 8 people, and that actually comes out at $106,000. So I like to walk it up here and go to 9 guests. So if I'm 8 through 12, I'm gonna check out what every single one of those brings. So 9 guests is 105, 10 guests is 105, 11 guests, 105. So there's not really gonna be a change in income going all the way to 12 people. There's a little bit more, I guess on the 12th person you get 106, but if you recall, on 8 guests, we're still gonna be at 106. So there's not gonna be much of a financial incentive to stick 4 more people in there. So for me, I try to sleep the least amount of people and yet be the most profitable. And in this instance, 8 people is technically the most profitable. And even if like 10 people was $110,000, yes, that is more money technically, but I'm also gonna spend more money in utilities, in wear and tear, in sheet and towel replacements. So there's a little bit of a sweet spot here. Now, one of the other things that I want you to keep in mind with AirDNA specifically, and this goes, with all the other metrics tools out there, is that they're an aggregator of data, basically, right? They're using algorithms to determine what that nightly rate is, what the occupancy is gonna be, and it really just gives you sort of an average of what other people in that market are making. So for me, whenever I'm popping the address into AirDNA, I really don't get too excited or too bummed out by what that number is, because I know that it's an average. So I know that if it's a really high number, well, for me, on average, I perform better than the typical host, so I know that I can always beat that number. But also if it's really, really, really low, and I'm looking at different comps and other people in the area, and I see that they're charging a lot of money, then I know that Airbnb is just kind of giving me that average or that median price point, and I can likely just totally crush that number. So really, I would not live or die by this number. I would use it as an initial feasibility test, and there are a lot of other tools here that we'll get into here in a second. But for the most part, obviously $106,000 on a $285,000 property is amazing, but now we have to actually go in and verify the comps. Now there are a couple ways we can do this. Typically from this point, I'm gonna actually go to airbnb.com and I'm gonna look at Tobyhanna, Pennsylvania. And I'm just gonna leave my dates open here because if you put in specific dates, Airbnb is only gonna show you places that are available for that specific date range. So always leave that blank. And then for your number of guests, I try to find places that accommodate, let's say for in this instance, 8. Now you can put 6 or 7 if you want, but I wanna find comps that very closely match this house that I'm considering buying, which honestly, I might by the end of this video. All right, great. So now we want to go even deeper into the filters here. Go to filters, go to beds. So we know it's a 4-bedroom, 4-bath, and now it's going to narrow it down even more. And then what you could really do, you can actually copy and paste an address into Airbnb. Great, so you can see right here, that's where it is. So now we're gonna look at places in the area, and I try to find places kind of in the radius here, if you will. There's a listing here for $543. There's another listing here for $563 a night, $1,600 a night, $1,643, $713 a night, $1,700. I don't understand. I've never heard of this place. Maybe this is like the next great big secret in Airbnb that I'm just divulging to all of you, but let's take a look here. So this sleeps 18 people. Poconos, oh, it's by the Poconos, that's why. Poconos is a very, very popular place. Now, when I'm actually running an analysis, there are a couple of things that I'm looking for. As you recall, I try to size myself up against similar competitors. So if this house is significantly nicer than the house I'm considering buying, I have to take that into consideration when I'm analyzing a deal. So this house, for the most part, it's hard to get get a read, so let me take a look. They have a hot tub, so obviously there's an advantage there, and a deck. Interior-wise, I would argue that they're probably not that much nicer. I would say it's pretty on par. In fact, it's a very empty house. So already I'm like, okay, this is a great place to jump in. They've got no art. They've got a super cheap mirror here, and they've got like, you know, like paintings they got from TJ Maxx, but you know, nice stainless steel appliances and everything like that. So next thing I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna actually look at their calendar and see how booked up they are. Right now it is January 18th, and we can see here that really for the next month or so, their first booking comes in, they've got 2 days booked for February, March is wide open. So not only am I seeing if they are a similar quality, but I also wanna see their ratings and how many reviews they have, because if they have no reviews, then they could have just made that listing a long time ago and never actually booked. So I'd like to see something that has at least 25 reviews. That would make me feel better. 50 makes me feel like really great. If a place has 50 reviews and I know that it's running pretty smoothly as an operation. This has 81. Obviously, the more reviews and the more people with a lot of reviews, the better, because then you know it's a relatively established area. 81 for me checks the boxes, 4.77 rating. So they're booking, but people aren't loving it because there are things that they could probably work on. I have a couple properties with similar ratings, and it's not the end of the world. So jumping in here, I want to start to see now, I know the Poconos is probably a winter market if I remember correctly. So I just want to see how they're booking out for the next couple of months. And honestly, I don't really see much. Like, they're completely open. But what's interesting is that they jack up that price to $1,400 a night, $925 a night. And one thing that I want to note here is that they're charging $250 for cleaning. But for the most part, I don't see a lot of bookings on this place. So that's interesting. So next thing that I want to go is like, all right, they don't have a lot of bookings. So are they an actual full-time Airbnb? So one thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to jump down to the bottom, and I want to just like look at the reviews and see how recent the reviews are. So Tim here left their review January 2022. Then their next review here was November, October, August. I'm kind of unclear if it's a full-time Airbnb rental. Could also be like their personal home that they rent out on weekends, or a second home, a vacation home, something like that. So this to me is not really like great proof, but that's fine. That's just one of many listings that we're gonna look at. Then we can jump into this. Similar quality, okay, it's 24 reviews. It's just under the 25. I'll allow it for the sake of this video. 4.5 here, right in the neighborhood. Again, it's a nice big house and it's cute, but for the most part, I would say from a quality standpoint, yeah, pretty on par. It's got a nicer bathroom, nicer tub and all that kind of stuff, but definitely not too far off from my property. Well, you know, my soon-to-be property, I guess. Okay, so now let's take a look. They're charging $561 a night, pretty similar price point. So we can see here in January, they've got 2 nights booked. They're charging $626 a night. So that's kind of an interesting thing here. At that price point, you don't have to really book that many days to really rake it in from a cash standpoint. So looking at February here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days is what they have booked. So they have a minimum of 5 days booked here. Because of these little grayed out days here, I think it actually might be a few more days. Let's just say even 5 here, 5 at $561 a night is $2,800. They've already booked $2,800 at a minimum for February, although I think it's a little bit more. March, April, May, June, they have a couple, oh, okay, they have a couple here in May too. Few days booked in July, all that kind of stuff. That's okay. Like, I would love for their calendar to be a little bit more booked up. Not a big deal because, you know, even for me, Casita Conejo is a really, really great performing Airbnb, but a lot of my bookings come in last minute. So that could be the case here. But overall, I'm not seeing a super strong calendar. Do want to keep in mind here that it is a 4.5 star rating. So perhaps it's just the rating is scaring people away. But let's take a look at what I call the review population, which is, you know, are people booking this with any recency? So we got January 2022, good, January 2022, December 2021, December 2021, December. So it looks like they do book up a decent amount. I couldn't really extrapolate and tell you how much they're making because they just don't have enough bookings. But right now it could also be like the slow season in that area. But one thing I do want to see is what do they charge in July? So let's take a look here. They got a couple days booked here. So let's see, in July, this price actually goes up to $661 and then they can hold 16 guests. So I want to see if that price jumps up at all. No. It does not. Okay, so that's pretty much the price point. So now we're gonna jump into the next one here. So you remember what I was talking about earlier? I like to see how my competition is doing and how I can beat them. Well, we're looking at 4.47, 4.5 something. The other one's 4.77. I think just kind of gauging the market here, we could probably step in and outperform these hosts in a couple of different ways. So let's take a look at the house. Again, no professional photos. I don't even think these other ones had professional photos. Surprise, surprise, no. I mean, it's a fine house. It's a fine house, I guess. Again, interior, not really like poppin' necessarily. They definitely love the sepia filter on their calendar. Okay, fine kitchen. That's the only real redeeming quality I see so far. The double fridge. I mean, they can host a lot of people as my guests. So let's actually take a look. Is that a double kitchen, you know? 18 beds, makes sense. They can host 16 guests. It's 9 bedrooms, 4 baths. I can see why it's $1,600. And honestly, sad to say, they might even get that price. So let's take a look. So just looking at February, for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's see what their price actually is in February though. $1,500. Okay, so it looks like their price is pretty consistently $1,500. So just in February alone, they have made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times 1,500. 7,500 bucks. So if they just book 5 more days in February, they would make $15,000. And I'm pretty sure they're probably gonna book those other 5 days. Because just right now, they've got another day here booked in January as well. And then in May, they've got 3 days booked. And again, like, I don't expect this to be completely full just because of how expensive it is and it's not super nice. But so far, that's like a pretty encouraging like number right there. Moving on here, new, huge 14-acre, 5,000 square foot estate, heart of the Poconos, $713 a night. And it looks like they've got, yeah, 1, 2, 3 days booked here. So 2,100 bucks just in the end of January. February, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A lot of people just booking 5 days in February. That's pretty funny. At 600 bucks a night, I do want to see, let's see, they can hold 14 guests. I want to see if their price changes with that. Goes up a little bit, 663. Then we can start to see here in May, it fills up and they only book out 3 months in advance. And it looks like either their June, July, and August is booked or they're staying there personally. My guess is they probably stay there during those months. I'd like to see a little blue heart gem on here, but it seems like it's pretty rare. So now let's go look at the review population. It's January right now. They only have 2 December bookings, 4 November. Okay, they've got a lot of Novembers. Okay, so it looks like they might have just had a really big reservation in December. They might have stayed there themselves. Here's where we get into like a really nice house. 5 stars, 22 reviews. Let's take a look. I mean, like this photo, like, dude, just pay like a neighbor to go out and take a photo on a camera made after 2002. All of these photos are way better. Why not just roll with that? Pretty bold wallpaper, but I actually do like this. So this place is really nice. Really nice property. I gotta imagine this is pretty expensive. Let's take a look at how many bedrooms it is as well. It's a 10 bedroom, 5.5 bath. They charge 1,700 bucks, probably worth every penny out there. And as you can see here, pretty empty, but then in June, July, August, it really just absolutely picks up. 2,200 bucks a night, $2,100 a night, $2,200 a night. Okay, so it looks like just in those 3 months right there, they have booked 1, 2, 9, 10, 11, 54 nights in 3 months. So 54 times 2,100, I'll take the low price. They made $113,000 just in those 3 months. So what I'm trying to do here is just understand if the people in the neighborhood are actually making any money. Now, if you've noticed, is that all of the different listings here weren't really booked up for the next couple of months. And that's like very troublesome for a lot of people that are new to this because they're like, oh my God, no one is booking at a high price for January, February. What do I do? And what I try to remind people is that there's such a thing as seasonality in this business, and it's really possible that this area just is not super poppin' for January, February, March, maybe even April. So there are a couple ways that you can assess that. Let's take a look here. Let's go back into AirDNA. Let's take a look at the seasonality here for this property. For Tobyhanna, best month is July, which is pretty clear because that one place that we just looked at was completely booked for July for the most part. But then you look at this little graph here for daily RevPAR and you go low to high. It goes blue for low, red for high, and it kind of tells you what the seasonality was for the last 12 months. So if you look here, we'll see that December, you can see like for the most part, Sunday through Thursday, same thing with October, that's pretty blue. So that just tells me that's not like the pop-in month. And then you can also see here, January, a lot of blue, February, mostly blue except for this 1 week right here, March, pretty blue. So these are just not gonna be the busiest months here. May, April, March, February, like that is all very, very blue. So it makes it very difficult to comp this out and extrapolate data because we're actually comping it out in kind of like the deadest season of the year. But if you take a look here, June through August are really the heavy hitting months. So when we looked at that really expensive property that was making $115,000 in those 3 months, that's because that's like their big hitter months. And pretty much after that, they probably make some money in the other 9 months, maybe cover expenses, maybe turn a profit. But most of the profit really is gonna come from that chunky part of the year. That's gonna be very similar to beach properties too, where most of the money comes in those 3 months too, and then it's pretty much a ghost town every other month. So now we'll hop back into the rentalizer on this guy. Now, one of my favorite tools here, and I think this is a new addition to the rentalizer, is that it actually shows you how much the actual rental income and how much your gross revenue has grown in the last 2 years. So you can actually see in January of 2020, if you would have ran this through the rentalizer, it would have told you that you would have made $55,000. And then if you kind of follow the trajectory here, if you were to run it into the rentalizer on every single one of these months, it keeps going up until we get to 2021 here, and then it really starts moving. And you can see here in August of 2021, it peaked at $109,000. And that's how we've ended at this $106,500 estimate. Now, this is always gonna be moving because obviously AirDNA is aggregating new data, and the pandemic and seasonality and all that kind of stuff has really just changed rates. So it helps give you a bird's eye view of how much the, not appreciation, but how much the revenue is growing year over year. You can see here in the last year, it's grown 23%, meaning if you bought it today versus last year, you would have made 23% more this year than you would have last year. And that's a really useful tool here in AirDNA that helps me assess if a property is worth investing in, because yes, I do want it to make great money, obviously, but I also want to just know that that area is growing year over year from a revenue standpoint. Is it appreciating? Are people traveling there more? Are hosts charging more money and making more money? And all of those different things factor into if this investment is worth taking or not. And then same thing here, seasonal revenue forecast. So you can just kind of see how the revenue changes month over month. And you can see July here, $12,600 is what you can expect on this property versus a slower month like May where it's $7,300. Dang. The lowest month here being September, $6,700. Just gauging that property, I know that for the most part, we are gonna turn a profit every single month, but obviously the summer months are the home run months. Now, next very useful tool here on AirDNA is that it actually has the top comparison properties. So we'll actually pull 5 comps in the area that sort of match up with the criteria of a 4-bedroom, 4-bath. Sometimes they'll take like a 4-bedroom, 3-bath, a 3-bedroom, 3.5-bath, just depending on what comps are in the area. And it will give you the 5 top performing Airbnbs, which I think is super helpful. And you know, they're not always gonna be Airbnb, like sometimes it's both Airbnb and VRBO, but you can just take a look here that the revenue on these places, $119,500, $19,000, obviously that's probably a newer listing, so they don't have much information on it, but $103,000, $33,000, probably, you know, obviously like the data is not always gonna be perfect, that's pretty low, or that host is really, really bad. And then this one right here, that's a 5-bedroom, 3-bath, is $151,000. So now what I wanna do is I wanna hop into the Airbnb listings here and just kind of take a look at how they're booking. And obviously they're making a lot, so I also want to know, can we match them? Like, is this achievable for the regular Beloke, if you will? So this place, definitely cute, but honestly, like they got textured walls and ceilings, but they did a really tasteful job with the actual interior design. Nice floors, really great backyard setting, beautiful decor. They have taken lemons and made lemonade out of their house. So this house, pretty much perfect. Like if I were buying this, wouldn't change a thing. So now I want to see, even for a place like this, that's a top performer, and I want to see, okay, on this place right now we are in January, I can expect them to be in the $8,700 to $8,900 range. So let's take a look at their calendar here, $301. That's going to show you the lowest price point on their calendar. We got 99 reviews of 4.93, so really just an awesome comp to be looking at. And we can see here that their January is fully booked up, meaning that just on the final 12 days of the month, they have made, well, it's actually 13 times 301. They're at $3,913 just for the last 13 days of January. If they booked out the entire place at even the low price point of $301, then they would have made $9,300, which is, you know, not too far from this $8,700 forecast that AirDNA put in here. I don't want to extrapolate because I don't know if they booked the first couple of days here. So let's take a look at February. February has 28 days and they only have 4 days unbooked. So I want to see what prices they're booking these at. Let's see, $395, and that's just that one guest. And then they've got 6 guests. Let's see if that increases the price. Okay. We got the blue diamond here. Very, very nice to see. And then we can take a look here, see if the prices change. $238. So it looks like during the week, they're booking at $212. In April, $263, $288. So really, I guess that's their weekend pricing, maybe the 300s. Yeah, $389. Okay, so let's take an average then, including, let's say it's like $250 to $275. So just looking at their February though, let's multiply, let's see, 24 times, let's call it $250, just to be conservative here. And they've made $6,000 so far for February. They've got 4 more days where they can still make a little bit more. And $6,000, obviously I'm extrapolating a bit here. I'm moving quickly because it is YouTube. YouTube. But 8,900 bucks, so I'm off a little bit, but also they might have charged more for those weekends and everything like that. Then we get into March. We see that they are starting to book, but remember March, April, May, those are all kind of dead months. And then we get into June and July, and this is really where those prices, I imagine, are gonna start going up a bit. 432, take a look at their weekend rate, 578. Let's take an average day. Average is going to be 497. And we know that for the most part, July is probably gonna book at a 100% occupancy. So 497 times, let's call it 30 days, $14,900. So let's take 497 times 30 days, $14,910. And then we know that for the most part on their peak season, they're booking pretty close to 100%, but maybe not quite. So we'll multiply that times 3. In 3 months, they will more than likely make around $44,000 to $45,000. So there's a lot of different ways to extrapolate this, obviously. But now I want to go into the review population, just make sure January, December, 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 December. Wow, they hosted a lot of people in December. So this is what I like to see. I like to see a pretty populated set of reviews here that show me that people were booking this place even in the slow season. So again, this place is really nice, definitely nicer than the place that we're looking at, but I can see how a place like this is making $120,000. Then we go into this place right here. They charge $421 a night. Cell phone photos, it's very dark. These photos are very bad. This is very cabiny. This is like very Pocono-y, if you will. 96 reviews, 4.98. People like it. Looks like their January is a little slow, but their February seems to be doing okay. They're about 50% booked, 470 bucks. Rare gem, meaning that they're probably booked 90 to 100% of the time. I want to jack this up to 8 guests. I want to see if their price changes. No, so they are pretty much consistently booking at 470 in those slow months. Now let's jump over to July. Looks like based on this, they only book 3 months in advance. Personal preference. These days I'm booking about 6 months in advance, but that's fine. So let's take a look here what they charge in June. $450, looks like they're not greedy. They could definitely charge more if they wanted to. Then we're looking at $500 a night in July. So they actually don't jack up their prices too much according to seasonality from what I'm seeing. Because even during like the slow months here, they're charging $450 at night. They're leaving money on the table, guys. And that's what I like to see, because all they would have to do is take professional photos. With the right pricing strategy, a place like this could make so much more money. So right now we're looking at this, it makes $105,000. I believe that. I believe that based on what we've seen. Now we'll take a look at this last one right here. Okay, so 4.97, 65 reviews. New, I don't know if it's that new, if it's 65 people have stayed there. They're charging $291. Looks like they've got a couple bookings here in January. I want to confirm that $291 is actually what they're booking. See, that's $333. Let's see what their weekend pricing is. $460, cool. Looks like they're relatively open. I mean, they don't look like a premium property to me. There's a lot wrong with this place, starting with the photos. Oh my gosh, we need to get into this market, guys. Let's take some professional photos. We can win, we can beat these guys. Cute house though, has potential. From an interior standpoint though, about on par with the house that we were looking at. They've even got popcorn ceilings, old oak cabinets. So really not too much special about this house, other than the fact that it can hold 16 people, which is probably why they can make the money that they make. Now, it says that they book for $151,400 a year. Seems a little high to me, but maybe. I mean, I don't really know. AirDNA might know more than me. But let's just take a look at their July pricing here. 517, 555. Then I want to go to their slow season really quick. 351. So throughout the year, it looks like their average is like $425 just off the top of my head. So $425 at an 80% occupancy gives you $124,000 a year. This place says that it's $151,000. So obviously that's a pretty big deviation, but we can see for the most part that I think $106,000 is not really that outrageous for this property. So we've analyzed the heck out of this property. I don't know if we have time for 3 properties like I thought, because I'm relatively certain that just analyzing this one property, it's been at least 30 minutes. So we're just gonna do one property today, but now I just wanna actually jump into my model and show you how I would run an analysis on this. And this property costs $285,000. $285,000. Now, as far as a down payment is concerned, that's gonna depend on what loan type you go with. I'm a really big advocate for second home loans and vacation home loans, which allow you to put 10% down. Estimated closing costs on this, to be very conservative, I'm gonna put 3%. Remodel, like I said, there's not a lot that I would do to this place, but considering that I did want to paint it and do a few little things, I'll put $5,000 in here. Setup fee, these are all of the different costs associated with setting up an Airbnb. So for me, this is gonna be like flights, rental cars, meals, all those small expenses that kind of add up while you're actually in the process of furnishing it and doing all that kind of stuff. So right now I'm in the middle of a country. It's about a 3-4 hour flight. So I would put about $3,000 for that. If I was on a completely different coast, like California, for example, flights would be more expensive. I would jack that up a little bit, but we'll just keep it a nice even $3,000 for now. We're not gonna spend $75,000 on furnishing. We're gonna spend about $10 per square foot, which is $22,000. That's what I try to stick to for the most part. I always end up splurging, but I teach students to budget for $10 a square foot. If it was a more premium and luxury place, I'd spend more, but it's not. So we're gonna try to keep it hopefully lower than $22,000. Seller credit, if you can negotiate any kind of seller credit or anything, that's always gonna be nice. But let's just say that this is a very cut and dry deal, so we'll put 0. So estimated cash to close is the total number, furnishings, closing costs, down payment, setup fees, legal fees, all that kind of stuff. This would be like what my attorney charges me for like LLC formations and any legal work that I would need. So total, we would need $67,800 to like close on this property and get it set up on Airbnb. So right now, interest rates are fluctuating. I would say you could probably get like a 3.5% on a second home loan, depending on your credit. So I don't think there was an HOA on this place, if I remember correctly. Oh, it's an annual HOA fee of $155, so I guess like 15 bucks. PMI payment, all that kind of stuff. So your monthly payment on this is gonna be $1,618. And then we're gonna go back to AirDNA here. It's gonna say $461 a night at a 63% occupancy. So $461 a night at a 63% occupancy. Now there are a few other costs here that we're gonna go through. We've got the booking platform fees, so this is the 3% that Airbnb takes. And then we've got fixtures, furniture, and equipment replacement. I kind of calculate that into the maintenance. Feel free to pad this however you want to. I typically don't spend more than 4% on maintenance every single year. I've just been very lucky. That's been my yearly average for the last 4 or 5 years. That's not true. That's a lot higher than my yearly average. But for those of you that like to play it safe, I would put between 4 and 10%. Really just depends on how much you like to pad your estimate here. And then if you have a management fee, this is really if you want to pay a management company to do that. You can put 15%, 20, 25, 30. That's going to be pretty standard for a management company. But here at the Raw Built channel and in Host Camp, we talk about self-managing because that's what we do, guys. We don't pay people 30% to manage our short-term rentals because that is a ripoff. Not gonna pay for that. Just kidding. That's not a ripoff. It's, you know, your time is worth money, I guess. Just learn my ways, okay? And manage it yourself and work your way towards financial freedom, okay? So with all of that said, there is one final thing that I want to talk through here. This is a little bit out of order, but let me talk you through this. So percentage to partner, if you're partnering up with an investor or with a partner, you can calculate what your return is going to be based on that percentage that y'all agree on. So we'll just assume you don't have a partner. So we'll put 100% here. And then we're going to also make a few other assumptions. So because this is a 4-bedroom, 4-bath, I would imagine that most cleaners in the area, I'm gonna say that they're gonna charge you between $150 to $200 per clean. So we'll go down in the middle there. And typically I'm hosting between 8 to 12 stays per month, but in places like the Poconos or the Smoky Mountains, it would honestly be closer to like 6 or 7. So I'm just gonna put 8 here because based on my experience, these types of markets end up being longer stays. So I think 8 is a pretty fair number for this specific deal. Now, I do wanna talk about a few things. AirDNA, when they're giving you this like gross number, this is not your net. This is not how much you're gonna make. This is how much you are going to receive in bookings. Technically speaking, if you go into the AirDNA platform and their FAQs, this number actually does include cleaning fees. Now, I don't typically include cleaning fees in my personal estimates or in my analysis because I tend to outperform the AirDNA rentalizer. But for y'all that are just getting started out, if you want to be very conservative with how you're running your numbers, I would make sure that you're factoring in cleaning fees into your overall return, which you can do that here. So depending on what price you want to adjust, you can say, hey, I think I'm going to book 10 stays a month. So this is all sensitive and this eats into your operating profit right here. So you can see $50,970. Break that down to 8 cleans. Now it's $55,170. So this will give you the most complete view. And of course, there are so many other ways that you can pad this. You can, again, increase your maintenance costs. You can add CapEx if you want to do that and all that kind of stuff. So after factoring in everything, your profit on this property would be $55,170. Now keep in mind that you needed $67,800 to purchase this property, get it furnished, get it set up. So that means that your cash on, well, this is a pretty high one, but your cash on this one is going to be 81.37%, meaning that your payback in months, in 14.7471916 months, you will have made back your investment. Now, this is a little bit of a juicier deal. I got really lucky plucking this one out, I will say, but that just shows you that there's a lot of wiggle room in this specific deal. Okay, so again, you can manipulate the numbers as many times as you want. You can go in and you can say, all right, I think I'm actually going to do do 12 cleans a month. Well, now your return is gonna be 68.98%, basically 69%. Nice. Anyways, and then you can also say, I don't think I'm gonna book for $461 a night. I think it's gonna be closer to $300 a night based on that property. And I think it'll be closer to 55% after looking at similar comps. Great. You can kind of adjust and play with this model and it will help you see how much you can possibly make. Now, I think that's pretty low. I actually think it would be closer to like this 300 to 375 number. And I think it would be probably closer to 70 to 80%. I aim for 80%, but even here, you can see at $350 a night at 70% occupancy, we're looking at a 46% return. Now for me, my bare minimum to really consider a deal that I'm gonna make an offer on is I want a 20% cash on cash return. That is about twice as much as you're gonna make on a long-term rental and about twice as much as you're gonna make in the stock market on most years. So for me, the fact that I can beat long-term rentals and the general stock market by a factor of 4.6 is pretty enticing because this deal still works at even a 65% occupancy. It still works at a 60% occupancy, and it still works at a 55%. Well, yeah, it pretty much works at a 55% occupancy. Look, would I like to get $106,000 per year and get a 68.98% return, which is basically 69%? Yes, of course I would. But when I'm teaching my students and everyone that watches the channel, I want you to pad it a bit so that you can insulate yourself from like not making the return that you want to make. Just be super happy if you can actually make it all the way up to a 70% cash on cash return. I think it's pretty unrealistic to expect that out of your deals. I know people that want 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100% cash on cash return. Let's not get greedy, but really run the numbers, run the good, better, best scenario, and decide what works for your investment strategy. Oh yeah, and there's a couple other things here on AirDNA that you can even like really get into the nitty gritty here. You can actually even look at the occupancy rate here for the property. I think that this is for the last 30 days here. The number of book days divided by the total number of days available for rent in the last month. So 42% was the occupancy for basically all of January. You've even got things like the booking lead time, which is basically the number of days in advance that the average reservation was made for stays occurring in the last month, and then booked properties. There were 529 booked properties in this entire area. And then you can actually see how you stack up to the 25th percentile, the 50th percentile, the 75th percentile, and the 90th. So you can say, hey, I think I'm gonna be an average performer. You can see where your occupancy rate would stand against the 50th percentile for every single month here. So you can see here in February of 2021, it would have been 57%. In July 2021, 81%. But then like for me, I'm more of a 90th percentile kind of guy. So for me and my listings, like that's where I usually stand. And I can see that these places are pretty much booked 87, 97% of the time, 96, 96, 96, 93, 94, 97, 100%. So you probably don't want to do 90th percentile if you're kind of new to this. I think 50 and 75th percentile is going to help you. If you've locked down a really nice property and you've watched all my YouTube videos and liked them and hit the subscribe button and left me a comment and enrolled in host camp, then I'll let you do 75th percentile. So there are a lot of really cool tools that you can use in AirDNA. Now I do want to say that out of all of these tools, the rentalizer is free. So you can actually like put in the address. I think you get like 50 to 100 free searches or something like that. But if you want to unlock all of these different things like occupancy rates, revenue, smart rates, pacing, all that kind of stuff, there's a subscription fee for the market that you're looking in. Now here's where I gotta say, like, don't be cheap. It's like anywhere from like 30 to 40 bucks, I think. And I really don't want you to cheap out here because it's like, if you're buying a $285,000 property, you're gonna spend $67,800 bucks, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you could probably afford 40 bucks to really solidify your analysis and really find out if this investment is gonna work for you. And that's it. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, Caleb. You're gonna have so much fun editing this cute little 10-minute video. There's so much more that I could say about this, and I want to. I might make this a series on the channel. If you want more AirDNA and more analytics goodness, let me know in the comments down below if like there's a good response. As you guys know, when y'all want something, Rob Built delivers. But like I said, yeah, there's so much more that I could say that I want to say, but I know that this is probably the longest video that will ever have made it onto the channel, is my guess, or YouTube. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments down below, and I'll do my best to get them answered. So yeah, that's how you analyze a property and pick it apart and look at competition and see how you stack up against them. And I know it wasn't super nitty-gritty on comping out 3 or 4 different properties, but I actually think it's pretty useful for me to just walk you through my mindset, my POV, and like exactly how I look at properties more than the actual like calculating. I have a couple of other videos on the channel that talks about that, but this is like my actual philosophy for analyzing a short-term rental investment. This is genuinely where I shop for like most of my Airbnbs whenever I'm setting up a unit. So first of all, I want to say that there will be a large temptation to buy most of your furniture at IKEA and Target. I would really shy away from this.
When I was first getting started, I was like, oh my God, IKEA is amazing! But then I really started to look around and examine other Airbnbs, and when I would, I'd be like, oh, I've got that lamp. Oh, I've got that giant poster of Marilyn Monroe. Oh, I've got that Swedish meatball holder.
Now there are some key exceptions here, of course, when it comes to Target. One thing that's totally raw built approved is effectively every single thing in the hearth and hand section, because our gods Chip and Joanna Gaines would never let us down. I really love their mirrors, jars and containers, and Rise and Shine coffee mugs, which I know are oddly specific, but they're cute, sue me. Usually when I'm furnishing an Airbnb, I walk in with 2 carts and just buy out the section. I tend to buy all my sheets from IKEA. I also get my duvet covers from there and my duvet inserts. And the reason I like getting my sheets from there is because they're 100% cotton. And they're the only place where you can get 100% cotton sheets super cheap. Otherwise, good cotton sheets can cost you double, triple, or quadruple if you bougie AF, which you're not because we're trying to stick to a budget. And you really don't want to splurge too much on sheets anyways, because you're going to be replacing those things like every couple of months. So it's best to keep that part of your budget tighter. You know what that's from?
No.
You will in a second.
Didn't say lose weight. I might say tighten.
Tight.
A little tighter.
Final little thing here, I get a lot of my curtains from IKEA too. Now let's move on to what I consider adult IKEA, and that's gonna be World Market. They are a big box chain, but they just have a way more premium product for the price. I love getting couches, dining room tables. Oddly enough, my favorite place to get plates. All right, we're on borrowed time here because kids are going crazy and my wife is cooking in the kitchen, but I just wanted to speak to art real fast and say, in general, I try not to buy art from any big box chain, but in a pinch, if I absolutely have no option, I get a lot of my art from World Market. I think that they tend to have like the better, more unique art.
Your art was the prettiest art of all the art.
But for the most part, I try to buy downloadable prints from Juniper Print Shop. I'll then send it to FedEx to get printed. I'll frame it up and hang it in my house. And I like doing this specifically because there are like thousands of options to choose from, whereas places like IKEA, Target, Ross, World Market have like 5 to 10 singular pieces that literally everyone uses for their Airbnb. Let's take a moment for a public service announcement about plants and pillows. In my mind, 2 things really make or break a space, and that's usually gonna be throw pillows and fake plants. Now, you can do real plants. It's obviously gonna be a lot more ideal. But the problem is that plants are living things, and if you don't have your cleaners, your guests, or Matt Damon helping you tend to your plants, they're gonna die. And we don't want plants to die. So for me, I'm always just leaning on fake plants. And I will say that there is a very big difference between fake plants and nice fake plants. So honestly, as crazy as it sounds, if you get a very good fake plant, it's typically gonna cost you a lot more than the actual plant itself. This is a fake fig plant, and I think it cost me like $150. A real fig plant can cost you anywhere from $30 to $80. But the thing is, like if you want it to look realistic, if you don't want it to break whenever you move it, you can really ruffle this around and you don't have to worry about the leaves falling off of the plant. Whereas if you get a very cheapo plant, man, that stuff just breaks apart all the time. The fake dirt crumbles and breaks. And if you've got kids that are just messing with your plants, which literally like our plants in this house always stay on our media consoles and credenzas and everything like that. From a child-proofing standpoint, it also behooves you to have like nice fake plants. In my opinion, you really can't spend too much on fake plants and pillows. I've been known to spend about $1,200 on a single trip to World Market on throw pillows and fake plants, as you can see here. And this is literally all we could fit in this frame, but there are so many other plants and pillows in this house that's not even included here. So trust me, if you've purchased nice furniture and your place looks pretty good and you're like, ah, it's missing something, usually the addition of a couple plants here and there in the corners can really liven up a space. World Market, in my opinion, has the best selection on both of these items. I think we should talk about splurging, because I think the hardest part for most people that are setting up a short-term rental or an Airbnb in general need to really understand that you need to choose your battles from a budget standpoint. And what I mean by that is that if you're like most normal people, you have a budget set and you really don't want to go over that budget, and so there are sacrifices that you have to make along the way. So it's really about asking yourself, do I want the living room to be the showpiece, or do I want the dining room to be the showpiece, or the kitchen? Now, whenever I'm breaking down my budget and having to make the heartbreaking decision on where to splurge, I usually tend to spend a lot of my budget towards the cover photo of your Airbnb listing, because this is gonna be the biggest photo on your listing that is really selling your house to anyone. If you wanna charge $200, $300, $400, $500 a night, you really got to sell them in a nice, beautiful photo. And so you really have to decide what room is going to sell your place the most. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be a room. For example, like here in my cottage in Tennessee, I've got a giant deck with a view of the Smoky Mountains. So maybe in this instance, I would splurge a little bit more on my patio furniture because that would be part of the epic photo that showcases the mountains that surround my house. But honestly, pretty consistently, I put most of my money into the living room. That is where people are going to be hanging out. They might have a beer, they might have some cocktails, wine, heroin, whatever that is. That's really going to be where people are gathering together, sinking in, vegging out, watching TV, laughing, catching up. So for me, I like to think of my Airbnbs as what place brings the most comfort to people, and that's usually the living room. Now, usually whenever splurging, the pieces that are going to take up the biggest part of your budget are what I call statement pieces. So these are going to be things like couches, coffee tables, credenzas, buffets, media consoles, side tables, and dining room tables. And these are basically the pieces that are going to be defining your space, so I'm fine breaking my budget here. As for where I'm usually getting my statement pieces, these are usually the more big box retailers that are on the premium side. So this is going to be like your West Elm, Crate and Barrel, Restoration Hardware, CB2, Pottery Barn, and of course Ross. I honestly think that the worst part about setting up and buying furniture for your Airbnb is the fact that we tend to buy things that are so much nicer than we'll ever own in our own houses. Prime example is this couch, which is the most beautiful thing that I've ever laid eyes on, and we don't even get to take it with us when we move back to LA because it's staying behind with this Airbnb. I'll miss you. Speaking of couches, I'm usually snagging these from Article when I can. Like I said earlier, World Market's a great option too. The West Elm outlet has super affordable options as well. People also rave about the Polly & Bark brand leather couches on Amazon, and don't worry, you don't have to scramble. A lot of this is going to be linked out in my shopping list in the description below.
Now let's talk about the greatest place on earth, which is obviously Costco. I get some pretty specific things from here, like batteries, pots and pans, and hotel grade towels, and they also have absurdly cheap pillows. You can get like 2 memory foam pillows for like, I think $12.99 or something. Costco also definitely comes in the clutch for things like cleaning supplies, toilet paper, paper towels. Like, for real, it's by far the cheapest and best place to get butt paper.
And obviously, I stock all my Airbnbs with steaks from Costco because duh. Lastly, I tend to fill in all the different gaps on Amazon and get, final little touches, and if I'm missing a fake plant and I need it super fast, or knickknacks or pieces of art, whatever that may be, I get that from Amazon. I definitely get all of my mattresses and bed frames from Amazon too. This mattress and bed frame is actually from Zenus. I've never actually said that out loud before. This bed frame pretty much matches any style that I go with on Airbnb. Now, if I'm not mistaken, the last I heard, these have some kind of recall or something like that. I've never had an issue with them, but either way, I also get Sleep Signature mattresses too off of Amazon, and people rave about these mattresses. Like, they will contact me literally 1 year later and be like, hey, where'd you get your mattresses from? They're so nice. I've never slept so good in my life. So you're welcome for the free advertising, mattress companies. And final point that I just realized I hadn't thought about until this moment, for the most part, I get all of my rugs from ruggable.com.
All right, take a deep breath. That was a lot. Let it sink in, digest it, process it. Go back, watch the video again. You're gonna be fine, I promise. But hopefully now you have a pretty good idea on how to tackle furnishing your Airbnb. Maybe? If this is the biggest component that's been holding you back from starting an Airbnb business, hopefully now you have a little bit more comfort knowing that it's really not too bad. Back when I had a consulting business, the furnishing aspect of an Airbnb is what used to really hold back my clients because they really felt like they were biting off more than they could chew. So yeah, that's furnishing an Airbnb.
Look at this. It's a high quality photographer right there. You know, you need someone that's willing to get on the roof and get shit done. Welcome back to today's episode of Raw Built, where we're gonna be showing you how to photograph your Airbnb so that you can get thousands and thousands of dollars of bookings. All right? I don't know. It's not really the intro I had in mind, but it probably works. So let me paint a picture here for you. Imagine that you buy a $500,000 house and you have to pay $100,000 as a down payment, 20%. And then you finally close and you take off of work a whole entire 1 or 2 weeks, and then you set up the Airbnb and you spend a lot of money doing so, and you go to World Market and you argue with your wife or your business partner about spending too much money on plants, and then finally you're done, you crush it, the place is absolutely amazing. And then at the finish line you say, hey, I've spent a lot of money already. I don't think I need to spend money on professional photos because I've got an iPhone 12. And so you decide to take photos that look like this when you should be taking photos that look like this. This happens thousands of times per day with all the listings that hit the short-term rental market, and it's costing hosts thousands of dollars, literally thousands of dollars in bookings. So today we're gonna be talking about why your biggest Airbnb splurge should be professional photography, as well as a few tips for actually photographing the magic of your Airbnb and making it shine in your listing. But I didn't want to do that without actually bringing my personal Airbnb photographer, who is solely responsible for making me tens of thousands of dollars in bookings over the past 2 years.
I'm Eric Barkhurst. I have a studio in Southern California called Barkhurst Studios, and I shoot hundreds of Airbnbs a year.
we couldn't afford the wind machine. So how often would you say you take photos for a client Airbnb and it actually impacts bookings?
All the time. I hear back from clients consistently saying that a lot of those photos are leading to higher booking rates, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, actually, this reminds me of a time, an actual anecdotal experience actually working with Eric here, where I was actually setting up my Airbnb in LA and I put cell phone photos up because I just didn't have time to schedule a photographer. And I hadn't actually heard a peep in like a month. I was like, oh, I wonder if my place is actually gonna book. Eric came in, shot my Airbnb, and literally within 1 or 2 days, I got 2 or 3 different booking requests. And the one that I actually accepted was a $3,000 booking. That specific guest actually ended up extending their booking twice, and it turned into a $10,000 booking. I don't know if I ever told you this, but basically this $500 investment that I made turned into a $10,000 booking for me. So that's pretty good. That's good, right? Thank you.
Awesome.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. Love it.
So here's actually the crazy thing. Another story about Eric here is that he actually came in and reshot the home that I just told you about, and I actually just locked in the biggest booking of my Airbnb career for 6 months, and it came in at a whopping $33,000. Previous to that, the biggest booking I'd ever gotten was 10,000 bucks. So as you can see, good photography pays for itself over and over and over again. So now that we've established that professional photography works, thank you, I appreciate it.
Welcome.
You've made me a lot of money. We wanted to talk about a few tips that you should keep in mind as a host whenever you're briefing your photographer. You got a couple in mind here?
I've got a few. One, if you have an epic backyard, epic view, please think about doing sunset photos, string lights, pool lights, jacuzzi lights, anything that really emphasizes the space where people can really hang out in is a huge, huge benefit.
Yeah, so this is a really, really significant one because a lot of the times photographers, they're busy, right? They might have 2 or 3 shoots during the day. And so if they slot you in on a shoot like at noon, the lighting is gonna be completely different at noon than it might be at like 5 p.m. when the sun is setting. And the sun might be a lot harsher at noon, right?
Correct, yeah, you get a lot of straight down shadows, so it's very contrasty, it doesn't look very good in the photos.
Yeah, and then a lot of stuff just looks blown out, the colors aren't as rich, and so if you come in at twilight, or twilight's in the morning?
Twilight's at night.
Okay, which one's in the morning? Blue hour? Gold?
You have blue hour, golden hour.
How many hours are there?
There's about 4.
24. There's 24. All to say, if your photographer comes in the morning at blue hour, or at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. at golden hour, or right as the sun is setting at twilight, right?
Yep.
That's correct?
Correct.
Right, I'm getting
Sounds
nervous
good,
here.
Rob.
I'm out of my element.
You're doing good.
Those photos are gonna look drastically different. And I just actually wanted to show you the difference that twilight photos can make when you compare it to photos that we're taking in the day. So as you can see, this is my Scottsdale property. And the photos are good, but most of these photos were taken mid-afternoon. And when you compare them to the twilight or the sunset hours, it's just night and day difference. These are the new photos that Eric actually took of this place. And as you can see, it's a pretty epic difference. All right, so rookie mistake, he had to actually go take photos of the place at sunset. So we ran out of light. So we're in the house now. We're gonna get into tip number 2 here, which is edit to amplify. What does this mean when you in the context of an Airbnb?
It means don't have too much stuff in one shot. You want the frame to be full and you want it to look good and inviting, but you don't want too much clutter or things all over the place.
Yeah, so for example, you might stage a place and there's a lot going on in your field of view. So whenever you're taking photos, you might have to just move stuff around so that it looks better in the photo, even though that's not actually where it's gonna be in the house. So for example, like if your accent chairs are too close together, it might look better in real life that way, but in a photo it might look weird. So you might pull them out 2 or 3 feet so that they feel a little bit more spacious in the area in the scene. And on top of that, I think editing to amplify also probably means like reusing the same fake plants and throw pillows in every shot. Like I'm so guilty of this.
Yeah, I think a lot of furniture does really well with pillows, so don't be afraid to move a pillow to another room. Maybe a small plant on a nightstand could work really well as well.
Oh yeah, we use the same plant throughout the house. It's the central thread in the house, and people are always like, did you buy 10 of that plant? No, it's always the same succulent. You just carry that in your pocket. That's in like your tool bag.
Same with nightstands as well. So you can always kind of make a little, put a little spot on the nightstand. Maybe it's a candle, maybe it's a succulent, maybe it's something, but you want to fill the frame, but not have too much stuff where it's overwhelming.
And last and probably the most important tip out of this is probably something you feel quite a bit, but is to actually make sure that you have a clean exterior.
Clean exterior and clean windows are key. If you have any kind of view to the exterior, you need to have your windows clean before the photographer gets there. The second thing is with the cleanliness is that, you know, kind of everybody spends so much time inside the house making it look beautiful, but make sure you look outside, make sure you pick up your trash, make sure the gardener had come, just kind of do a clean sweep of the outside.
Yeah, because if you think about it, honestly, a lot of people joke and they say, oh, they'll fix it in post or they'll Photoshop it. But it's almost impossible to Photoshop clean windows. Like if they're smudgy, if they're gross, you can't Photoshop that. If there's a bunch of leaves everywhere, you could Photoshop that. I guess you could clone stamp it out, but it's gonna take you a long time. And so a good photographer, more than likely, if they're like, you know, if they're good people, they're gonna go and they're gonna clean and they're gonna sweep for you, but that's not what you hired them to do. You didn't hire them to be your maintenance people. You didn't hire them to clean up after you. You want it to be pristine outside for your photographer. That way, all they really have to do is edit to amplify, move stuff over, frame the shot however they need to, but they're not your cleaning people, right? That's a whole nother team.
Yeah, and I will say, I actually carry a blower in my car now.
Really?
To get rid of leaves in backyards. Don't expect that from most people, and I don't like to use it a lot, but I do have one in my car.
Like a leaf blower?
A leaf blower.
Did you bring
for
one,
this specific
did you bring one
reason.
here? Because we actually do. We need it.
Not here though.
Talk a big game. He talks a big game.
I thought Rob's house would be clean.
Yeah, you know, there are thousands of bushes out here, and literally we'll have the pool guy come out, and then the next day the guests will check in and there's like thousands of leaves in the pools. There's just a lot of maintenance items on a really giant property like this. There's 5 acres of natural vegetation, so it's like, it's crazy. All right, so that's 3 tips for briefing your photographer. As you can see, there is a bit of an art to photography, right? It's not just coming in and taking photos with a nice camera. There's an actual skill that goes into wielding a camera and giving your place the justice it deserves in its photos, right? So I wanted to quickly talk about the cell phone photo thing because I really do throw a lot of people under the bus here. I get a lot of students or a lot of people that reach out with their listings. I get people that will submit their listings and they take cell phone photos. And I really get onto them and I say, just spend the $200 to $700 that it might cost to take professional photos. It's really not that expensive. I know that's a big range, but there's so many photographers out there at different price points. But there is one instance when it's okay to take cell phone photos. I'm gonna give you permission to do it in this one specific time. And that's whenever you just need to launch your property and you have a photographer scheduled. And a lot of people will say, should I just wait to get the pro photos so that I can launch my property? And I always say, no, you should be trying to make money as fast as you can with your property. So I think it's perfectly acceptable to take cell phone photos of your place, launch for 1 to 2 weeks while you have your photographer come out and edit the photos. And once you get them back from your photographer, upload them as fast as you can, raise your rates, and I promise you're gonna make a lot more money. And also this could be a bonus for guests because they might have booked your place with cell phone photos and then they check back, they see new photos and they're like, whoa, they get super excited to come stay in your Airbnb. So that is the only instance when you can take cell phone photos is if you're waiting for a photographer. Other than that, don't cheap out. I know that a lot of you think, because a lot of you have reached out and said, well, my place is booked, no problem, and I've always had cell phone photos and blah, blah, blah. That could very much be true, but the problem is, if you're booked 100% with bad photos, what you're not realizing is that if you had good photos, you could be booked 100% at 20, 30, or 40% higher of an ADR, your average daily rate. So if you can just spare the $400 to $600, I promise you, you're gonna make that so many times over the course of your Airbnb career. Good evening and welcome to the Rob Built Hour. I'm your host, Rob. I don't know why I'm talking like that. So I just closed on 2 properties that I'm gonna be listing on Airbnb here very, very shortly. And I was about to start writing these listings and I thought, well, you know, I don't really have any content on the channel that actually walks you step by step through like how to create your Airbnb listing and how to write sparkling clean copy for that listing. So I thought today would be a really great opportunity to create like a step-by-step tutorial on how to craft the perfect Airbnb listing to, you know, increase bookings, increase conversion rates, get traffic going to your, Airbnb listing. And it's 11:32 p.m. so I know why I'm losing myself in the music the moment you want. It's too late. It's much too late for that. I know that this isn't going to be the most exciting video for a lot of you, but I will say that if you're looking to get into the short-term rental space or the Airbnb game, then you're going to need to learn how to do this, and it's really not too hard. So I'm going to try to walk through this as intuitively as possible and give you a few tips along the way too. By the way, be sure to use the link in my description down below when you're creating your listing, because when you do, Airbnb will actually match us up. They'll make me your ambassador and I can answer basic listing questions for you. So whenever your listing goes live, I can give you feedback and insight as to how to make it better. I won't be able to answer a ton of other questions. This isn't a consulting link or anything like that. I really wish I could, but there are thousands of you out there. But my promise to everyone that ever uses that link is I will do my best to make your listing as great as possible when you use my link. Okay. The other thing I'm going to say is that link will work if you've never hosted on Airbnb before. If you've never created a listing before, it will work. If you have a travel account, it will work. But if you've ever created a listing or hosted before, unfortunately, it will not work. I don't control the back end of this. I just answer questions on the little Airbnb website machine and all that kind of stuff. All right. So use that link down below and let me get you some feedback. All right, back to the video. So I'm gonna do my best to keep this as concise as possible, but know that the Airbnb dashboard is pretty intricate and there are a lot of different options that you can check. I'm not gonna talk through all of that today. I'm gonna try to keep this a nice little 10-minute video for you. Okay, so first thing you're gonna do here is click on create a new listing. Now you could duplicate an existing listing if you've already created one before, but you know, if you're watching this video, you probably haven't. So click next. And then you want to type in the physical address for where you're going to be creating your listing. So we'll go to 555 like and subscribe street. I'm just kidding. Okay, so let's go to 555. I'm just making up an address here. Frazee Lane. Okay. 63874 Frazee Lane, MacArthur, Ohio. I love it. Okay, so continue. So here you're gonna choose what kind of place your listing is. So you'll have a few options here. Is it an apartment? Is it a house? Is it a secondary unit? Is it a unique space? Is it a bed and breakfast? Is it a boutique hotel? In my particular instance, it's a house. And then it'll say, now let's narrow things down. So here you can actually choose what it is. Is it a residential home? A villa, townhome, cottage, bungalow, cabin, blah, 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 right? Mine in particular is actually a farmhouse, but I don't really see that as an option here, so I'm just gonna go with a cottage. You could say it's a cottage, why not? And then confirm the type of place that guest will have. So is it an entire space? Is it a private room, meaning is it a room in your house? Or is it a shared room, meaning is it like a room where more than 2 Airbnb guests that are strangers, like 2 different parties, are gonna share? So if you have a 2-bedroom house and you live in one room, and you rent out that other room to 2 separate people on Airbnb, that would be a shared room. So in my instance, it's an entire place. And then is this set up as a dedicated guest space? It gives you the option to choose, yes, it's primarily set up for guests. No, I keep my personal belongings here. So it's really just gonna depend on if you live there and you're just, you know, renting it out for part-time income, or if it's set up as a full-on Airbnb. I like to say that it's primarily set up for the guests. My theory here is that if Airbnb thinks you're serious about it and that it's 100% meant for Airbnb, then they'll push it in the search algorithm. I don't know if that's true, but either way, you can choose how you want to do it. And then which best describes how you host. I'm hosting as part of a business, I'm hosting as a private individual, and it kind of breaks it down for you. So in my particular instance, I think I'm hosting as part of a business. It's the first time I've ever actually chosen that option, but I am a full-time real estate investor now, so I'll do that proudly. Click on next, and then from here you're gonna choose how many guests that your place can actually sleep comfortably. So ours is a 3-bed, 2-bath. So my general rule of thumb here is that you can have like 2 people per room. So right there, that's 6 people. And then we typically put like a really nice sleeper sofa inside of the living room. That's like a pull-out sofa. Okay, so like I said, it's a 3-2. So that's right there is gonna be 6. And then we can sleep 2 in the living room. So that brings us up to 8. So we can have 8 guests. And one thing that I also wanna note, you wanna have the amount of guests that you can sleep comfortably. So just because you could cram 12 people in there, does that mean that you would want to? You only have 2 bathrooms. So while my rule of thumb is that 2 people can be in a room, I would say the max amount of people sharing a bathroom should be 5. So this house should have a maximum of 10 if we had the space for it, which we don't, because it's only like a 1,400 square foot house. So for us, we're gonna be at 8. It's gonna be a little snug at around 8. 6 is gonna be that optimal group size for us. So how many bedrooms can a guest use? So it's a 3-bedroom. How many beds? So we're gonna have 4 beds total. A couch counts as a bed. Then we actually break it down in here. So bedroom 1 is going to have a king. Bedroom 2 will have a full-size bed. Bedroom 3, a full-size bed. And then common space is the living room, and we have a sofa bed. And then the amount of bathrooms, 2 bathrooms, or if you have like a half bathroom, make sure to note that, it's a valuable thing. Then where's your place located? So we know it's on 63874 Frazee Lane. Frazee Lane, that's kind of like, that's like the location of my mind. My mind is on Frazee Lane at all times, it feels like. So once you put in your address here, it's gonna give you a couple of options. It's gonna put a pin exactly where your house is. I like to adjust it a little bit. I don't think Airbnb loves that you change it too much, but also like,
I don't really want people like trying to find my house based off of the pin on my map. And that's actually more real as a YouTuber and as someone that discloses like Airbnbs and stuff. Like, you know, I try to be a little bit more private these days just because people do show up. More often than you think. I adjust this a little bit, not too far off. I just try to go like right here. As you can see, I'm like right at the edge of that circle. I guess that's like the buffer zone for Airbnb. And the reason I have it that way, it's close enough to where it's not really gonna make a difference other than like 1 or 2 minutes, but it's far enough away to where if someone's driving around, they're gonna really have to work for finding your listing. So once you found the perfect spot for whatever works for your comfort level, you hit yes, that's right. And then you get into amenities here. So you have the essentials, which is towels, bed, soap, toilet paper, pillows, cooking basics, a desk workspace. This is a little bit loose. I don't think you actually need a desk, but I think if you have like a nice dining room table, that counts. An iron, hair dryer, shampoo, hangers, TV, heating. Yeah, so click everything that applies here. Wi-Fi, air conditioning, fireplace. Do I have a fireplace? I don't think I do. So I'm just gonna click that. Okay, and then safety amenities. These are all gimmies. You should have all of this. So smoke detector, carbon monoxide detector, first aid kit, fire extinguisher, lock on bedroom door. I don't actually know. I don't really think it, I mean, if someone chooses my place based on that, they're weird. Okay, so what spaces can guests use? So we have a laundry dryer, kitchen, and then laundry wash, and then that's it. And then does your space have accessibility features? Not this one, but my other space that I'm gonna list after this actually does have a wheelchair accessible bathtub, which is really cool. And then from here, you're gonna list all of your photos. So I'm gonna say one of my listing tips here that I always give pretty much all the time is to just spend the money on a professional photographer and don't cheap out here. I think it's perfectly acceptable to take cell phone photos if you need to, just to get your listing published and ready to go. But spend that $150 to $700 to get an absolute pro out there, because it's gonna be the #1 driver of your revenue. So please, please hire a professional photographer. It breaks my heart to see all these cute houses that people spent $10,000 on nice furniture and like nice couches and rugs and everything. Then they take cell phone photos with their potato phones. Don't do it, people. I guess since that is one of my listing tips, I actually have a PDF download of my top 5 listing tips for making your listing as solid as possible. So you can actually download that down in the description below. It's gonna give you some of the insights that I've learned over the past 4 years. So with that, let's get into the photos. So with your photos, I would say the more the better. I mean, anywhere between 25 and 50. However, make sure that they're quality photos. Like, I don't need to see a photo of your live, laugh, love sign. I don't need an up close photo of your like dinner time placemats. Although the occasional detail shot is fine, just make sure that you choose the photos that really highlight your place in the best possible light, both literally and figuratively. I guess another note while I'm waiting for these photos to upload, make sure to have your photographer come out and shoot during golden hour. That's something that I did not clarify. And while these photos look really, really good, golden hour is just, your photos look so much better. For example, Casa Mariposa, Casa Conejo, both of these were shot at golden hour, and they just have like a certain pizzazz to them. And sometimes the photographer will charge you a little bit more to come out because it is at the end of the workday, but I will say that I do think it's worth it. Okay, so photos are uploading. Don't get too caught up in setting what order they go in just yet. Just upload them and we'll work on that in a little bit. So now we're gonna describe our place to our guests. I'll show you how this shows up. So we got Casa Conejo here. Let me highlight this, and it's gonna be the very first thing that they see that you actually physically write, except for, of course, this headline up here, hop into the Joshua Tree Airbnb, 300 square foot tiny home. And then you have all these little features, entire home, enhanced clean, Robert is a super host, great location. Like, that does show up first, but that's all auto-generated by Airbnb. So here I like to start with something nice, like a sentence that describes your place, and then I like to get into the key features or benefits or, you know, those factors that people would book you for. So for us, this particular house is secluded because it's on 5 acres, but it's also in close proximity to a historic city and a few state parks as well. So that's what we're gonna be emphasizing here. And if all else fails, Airbnb actually gives you inspiration from the top rated listings in your area. So they show you how your competition writes it up. So you can always cop their style if you want to. But people usually cop my style, so I don't even need to look at that. So we don't need to watch me workshop this copy. I'm just gonna snap to it, and then it's gonna be nice and pretty, and there you go. Okay, so I just wrote this up in 5 minutes, and I'm gonna just quickly read it to you. Welcome to this thoughtfully remodeled 100-year-old farmhouse that lives on 5 acres of total seclusion. While this adorable home is the perfect private getaway for you and the family, its location, ooh, that's a typo. I did say I wrote this in 5 minutes. Its location makes it easy for you to get around. You are only 10 minutes to the Potomac River, 15 minutes to the historic Berkeley Springs, 20 minutes to Green Ridge State Forest, 25 minutes to Cacapen State Park.
Easy peasy. Now you can choose to add more details here to really blow out your listing. Basically, I do want you to treat your listing copy as a mini blog or a mini essay where you're really trying to convey as much as possible to me, right? So the next most important section here is gonna be your space. It does say optional, but it's not. It's not optional, I'm gonna make you do it. This is the part where you really expand on your listing and I want you to be able to close your eyes and have someone read your listing to you, and I want you to be able to picture what that house is like. That's how you really need to be treating the description copy, because this is what sells your place. Like, you want people to have zero confusion on what they're getting, okay? What they read is what they get, so make your words matter. I'm gonna write all this and then I'll read it at the end of the video, but basically fill it all in, okay? All right, now we gotta create a title. This is probably the most important piece of copy in your entire listing, okay? Make it count. I often see people use 2 or 3 words and they don't even write a title, and I'm just like, how lazy are you, okay? So make it sparkle, make it pop. Don't be lazy on this and write cabin in the woods. Give me some kind of descriptor and what's the best thing about this place. Now with all that said, you do only have 50 characters, so let's mess around here. Okay, so the selling point here, I think, is that it's a 100-year-old farmhouse. I think that's pretty cool. And it's on 5 acres, and it's close to Berkeley Springs, but we only get 50 characters here, so we're sort of limited on what we can choose. So it takes a little bit of finessing here. I'll use my copywriting skills here to kind of bust something out. So 100-year-old farmhouse on 5 acres of seclusion. And that's pretty much it. Wow, okay. So no, we'll go adorable 100-year-old farmhouse on 5 acres. Easy, okay? So I've now said it's adorable, great. It's 100 years old, great. It's a farmhouse, cool. It's on 5 acres. I do see people that will go like private. I don't know, I don't think you need to like ever cap it. I used to cap stuff, but I don't really think you need to anymore. So I don't know, I could even say on a private 5 acres. Nope, that won't even work. Okay, so we'll just spell out 5. All right, adorable 100-year-old farmhouse on 5 acres. On 5 private acres. Yeah, let's do that. On 5 private acres. So now it feels a little secluded, right? Okay, great. So next. Additional requirements. So review Airbnb requests. So this is basically asking you if you're allowing people to instant book or if you have to manually review every single request. Personally, I like to set instant book, but I feel like if you're getting started, maybe you do want to just consider manually reviewing your first couple of requests just so you can kind of get the hang of things. So if you are going the instant book route, which I am in this instance, you can make them submit a government issued ID to Airbnb so that their identity is verified through the platform. And you can also require that they are recommended by other hosts and have no negative reviews. So that's really gonna start weeding out some of those, you know, guests. Couldn't think of a descriptor. I've had a lot of guests. Oh God, I've had a lot of guests.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine.
And then we start setting the house rules. So is it suitable for kids? Yes. Suitable for infants? Yes. Suitable? No, it's not suitable for pets. That's gonna be a personal preference on you. Smoking allowed, and no. Events, not unless I'm invited. Additional rules, you're gonna wanna put all of the house rules that apply to you. I usually have a pretty crazy set of rules, but you know, this is really gonna be a personal preference, I think. And then details guests must know about your home. Must climb stairs, no. Potential for noise, no. Pets live on property, no. So all of this for the most part, I think, none of this really covers it. I mean, weapons on property, I haven't been there, so these guys haven't been on the property, so we should be fine. Next. So if you choose not to do instant book, you can just click right here where it says, I want to review every request, and that'll turn instant book off. Again, that'll be up to you. But I will say, like, a lot of people get so scared about, oh, what if people destroy my house? Airbnb does have this $1 million host guarantee. Hopefully you'll never have to use it. I had to use it whenever someone almost burned down my A-frame, which I'll link to right here. And I told that story on the channel a couple weeks ago. But other than that, I've actually had pretty good luck with Airbnb. And then successful hosting starts with an accurate calendar. This is basically them saying, hey, if you're making your dates available, someone books it, freaking commit to it, bub. Because no one likes whenever you cancel on a guest, because yeah. That's not fun for anybody. Have you rented out your place before? I have. And then how often do you want to have guests? I always like to say as often as possible. I think that triggers something in the algorithm that says like, oh, okay, they want to be promoted, so let's promote them a little bit more. If you say not sure yet or part-time, I don't know, I've never done it, but I don't really feel like Airbnb really favors those options. So now moving on to here, how much notice do you need before a guest arrives? Same day. I mean, it really comes down to your cleaners. If your cleaners are cool with a same day turn, awesome. If not, you can pad it out a bit. And then my general rule here for when guests can book, they can book anytime before midnight. In theory, the house should be ready. Guests can check in from 4 p.m. all the way through midnight. And then how far in advance can guests book? Well, I plan on owning this thing forever, so 6 months. You can do a year, you can do as much as you want, but for me, 6 months is what I'm comfortable with. And then I do like having a minimum of 2 nights. I think that kind of weeds out a lot of the party people, and I don't know. I like 2-night stays. No max, if someone wants to stay there for 15 years, come on, pal, I'll take your money. And then do you want to connect another calendar to your Airbnb calendar? So this would really matter more if you have like a VRBO listing that you're also creating. You can import and export each calendar to each platform so that you never have a double booking. And then set your availability. So I'm going to block the next couple of days. Just a little bit of buffer to give me some time to find out a few more facts about this house because my partner was the one that was there setting it up. So I need tomorrow to do that. So I would say in this instance, block off as much time as you need to get it ready. But I will say that giving yourself, you know, having someone actually book their first stay, like for me, if someone books on the 29th, we're hitting the ground running, and that means that we're gonna be ready on the 29th, rain or shine. And then base price. This is where Airbnb tries to sell you on smart pricing. Don't do it, no one likes it. Just go with one of the third-party services out there. I go with Price Labs, it's my favorite dynamic pricing tool, and I think it's just the easiest. But for now, I'm gonna scroll down here and say use base price only, and they're recommending $171 a night. That seems a little bit lower than what I had anticipated, so let me see what AirDNA puts us at. So Airbnb was actually kind of close at 171. AirDNA has me at 176, so I'm gonna go with that. Next. Offer 20% off to your first guests. Don't add a special offer. This just depends on how fast you want to get your first guests. I don't typically do it because I don't like giving discounts out because it's the worst crowds, but yeah, let's do it. Why not? Why not? There's a first for everything. Maybe they won't burn me and destroy me and leave me the worst freaking reviews like every other discounted guest always does. Probably will though. Weekly discount. I mean, this is kind of up to you. I typically do like a 5% weekly discount and like a 10% month long if someone wants to stay there. But honestly, I would rather not have a month long discount because I make more money that way. And so from here, it just kind of spits out like an algorithm based on what you chose. It tells you everything. It kind of sums it up nicely. You can hit next. And then it'll kind of take you into your local laws and taxes and say, make sure to get your permit, make sure that it's legal, blah, 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 blah. It's legal for us, so we're good to go. And then, yeah, I mean, that's sort of like the basics of actually like creating your listing. I can go ahead and publish that right now. I guess I will. I'm not actually done making it yet, but you know, why not? My listing is live. Wow, what an exciting thing at 1:21 a.m. So now that it's listed, here's where we're gonna go in and start optimizing things. So first things first, under pricing and availability, I wanna go ahead and add the cleaning fee in here. So cleaning fee on something like this, I imagine is gonna be about $175. People who clean my listing are paid a living wage. Yes, they are. Pay your people a living wage, man. Just do it. You're gonna be much better off if you do. Extra guest fee. So typically I charge $15 for extra guests. This is case by case. So in this instance, I can have up to 8 people. So I'm gonna let the first 6 people stay for free, but guests 7 and 8 will have to pay that $15 per night fee. So luckily for taxes, Airbnb actually collects and remits those taxes on our behalf to the county, to the state, or to Biden. I don't know. I don't know who they send it to. They send it to somebody. I always like to do cleaning fee first when I'm doing all of this, because if you don't, you might forget and then someone might book. And if someone books before you set the cleaning fee, then guess what? You're paying for that cleaning fee, and it always sucks. It's rookie mistake. It's happened to the best of us, but just do this first. Yeah, so that'll be pretty good from here. So policies and rules, let's see if there's anything here. Okay, so policies, you wanna set your cancellation policy. For me, I like to go strict or non-refundable. I don't like people canceling on me last minute. And you know, if I have a strict cancellation policy, then no matter what, I'm not refunding you, so book at your own risk. However, you have so many, I mean, there are literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 options that weren't here like the last time I did this. So give me a second, I'm gonna read all of this. All right, I just read through all of this. Honestly, this is gonna be your personal preference. I'm still gonna roll with strict. Firm seems promising, but So very important in your policies too is to set your checkout time. So my checkout time is always 10 a.m. That's pretty standard in the hotel industry, and that's standard for a lot of Airbnbs too. And then security deposit, I prefer to have a deposit of $300 to $500. I might go $500 on this property because it is nice and there's a lot of nice furniture in here. And you know, if people don't plan on breaking anything, then they shouldn't have an issue paying $500 for a security deposit. People who are scared by that $500 number, I don't want them. I don't want them to stay. Sorry, if you're scared at paying a $500 deposit, not gonna happen, pal. Skedaddle. Okay, anything else? Additional rules. Okay, great. So here's where I'm gonna add all of my different rules. So in additional rules, this is where you can have all of your house rules. So I'm gonna do that. I'm just using rules from a different listing. I really go overboard on some of these rules. Great. So We'll save that. Under guest requirements, since I am doing instant book. So for me, I like a profile photo to be required because I don't know, I want to know that they're a human and not a robot. So you'll be able to see that after they actually book. And then I think that's gonna be it. All right, so info for guests. Okay, so then we go to info for guests. Pretty simple here. Interaction with guests, I won't be available in person. And then I always write something like, while I won't be available in person, I am just a short phone call away. Some people really do choose to exercise that route. The remote's not working. Have you pushed the power button on it?
Oh.
It happened like a week ago. Check-in instructions, you can add that. This is where you're gonna pretty much add like, okay, do you have a smart lock, a keypad? We do have a keypad. Let's just say that's the code to it. Keep on rocking here. Okay, Wi-Fi details. You can set your Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi network, like and subscribe. Smash that button. There you go. Say that, those are your Wi-Fi passwords. Okay, great. And the last thing here, pretty simple, your co-hosts. So this is where you're gonna add a co-host, or you can add your cleaner too, pretty easy to do. You can just enter their email here, and then they'll have to accept it on their side at gmail.com. Invite. Perfection. Great, so that is pretty much all the basics here. The last thing you're gonna wanna do is actually set the order for your photos. So I like to set the best photo first. So we'll find the best photo of my house here. I'm gonna go, it's probably this one. There we go, cover photo. And so from here on your listing, you have like 5 different cover photos. So again, you just want to thoughtfully choose like the best photos in your place. So our living room is really, really cute. So we're gonna go ahead and move that. Then our dining room table is cute. And then we have some great amenities here with hammocks and fire pits, so let's go ahead and throw that in there. So basically my rule of thumb here, so I'm not gonna really hammer photos too much here, but my rule of thumb here is to really take them on a journey through your house. So really lead them through the house as much as you can. So if you start in the living room, and we have every different angle that kind of shows them what that next room looks like, then the bathroom, then the next room, then what the bathroom looks like for that room, and then the master, and back out to the living room and to the kitchen. So really kind of give them a little mini tour, if you will. Okay, so everything's squared away with the listing here. We're now in preview mode, and I wanted to just take you through it. I didn't completely finish writing it out just because it's YouTube and I needed to get to the point here. As you can see here at the very top, adorable 100-year-old farmhouse on 5 private acres. Awesome. Then we get into the actual listing description. Again, typically I would really blow this out and make this a lot more thorough and a lot more informative and descriptive and add a little bit of humor here and there, but I wrote this in like 10 minutes. So I've already read you through that first section. Then we get into the second section here called The Space, which reads, every aspect of this home has been remodeled to breathe new life into this storied farmhouse. While the home is equipped to host 8 people, we think the perfect group size is 5 to 6. We're happy to host all 8, but keep in mind it'll be a little bit cozier. Is that a cloud you're sleeping on? Nope, that's just the memory foam mattresses we stock in every bedroom. Even the living room article pull-out couch comes equipped with the memory foam mattress. So no need to draw straws on who sleeps where, because every single room in the house is its own little sanctuary. Sure, eating at the finest restaurants can be fun, but sometimes we all need a nice home-cooked meal, right? That's why our kitchen is fully stocked with all the essentials you'll need to cook you and your family a nice dinner. Guest access. The home is on 5 acres. You are free to roam and explore the land. Other things to note, there's a covered pool on the property. It's out of commission. We ask that you do not go near it. Please keep in mind that we run on septic, so please do not flush anything that's not toilet paper. And scene. So yeah, that is this listing. I'm gonna still be working and tweaking and really working on this probably for the next day or 2, but it's not really gonna be complete for at least a month because I'm always messing around and optimizing my listing as much as I can. So with that, hopefully you found this helpful. I don't know how long this video is. I'm sorry if it's long, but yeah, if it's long, then I'm sorry for providing you insane value for free. Don't forget that you can download my top 5 listing tips in the description down below. As I said, it's like the top tips that I've learned along the way as an Airbnb host over the past 4 years. So I want to talk about my experience with managing properties, how I used to self-manage it, how I transitioned into a property management software, some of the pros and cons, and then if you stick around until the very end of the video, live pro tip, I'll actually give you a walkthrough of the property management system that I use. So let's get into the nitty-gritty. After many years of fine-tuning my processes and systems, building my teams, I feel like I finally have a solution to managing my properties, right? Like, you know, I talk a lot about building your Airbnb Avengers. Caleb spent a long time on this specific graphic, so we're gonna go ahead and play it here. That's really just half of it. The other half of it's gonna be the property management tools, systems, softwares, platforms that you use. Okay, so let's backtrack a little bit and let's just define what a property management system or platform is. So a PMS for short is basically a platform, system, or service that provides solutions to the day-to-day tasks that hosts are carrying out in the short-term rental business. That sounds a little corporate, doesn't it? Basically, a PMS is this tool that has a bunch of cool little functions that don't make you pull your hair out every single day as a host. So a very quick example of a tool that would be part of a PMS that makes your life as a host easier would be something like automated messaging. So imagine that you have a very popular Airbnb and you are booking between 10 and 20 stays every single month. That's 10 to 20 people that you have to message several times throughout the course of their stay. So whenever someone sends you an inquiry, whenever someone checks in, the day after they check in and you want to follow up and make sure everything's going out, relaying checkout instructions, like all of those different scenarios are times at which you'll be sending messages to your guests, right? So that's just like 4 off the top of my head. If you have 20 reservations in a month, that right there is 80 messages that you would have to send out to different guests throughout any given month. Those are a lot of messages that you're probably going to forget to send out because you're human and there's just no way that you can do all of that by yourself. I used to do this myself. I used to self-manage myself and I used to miss messages all of the time. Well, with the proper PMS, you can actually automate all of your messaging so that you don't have to like be in the weeds of messaging every single one of your guests. It's a beautiful thing. It's something that I talk about quite often on the channel because I'm just such a big believer in automating so much of your business as you can. Another very little nifty tool would be like auto inquiry messagings. Whenever someone does an instant book and they send an inquiry asking you some kind of clarification around your listing, typically you want to respond to those people as fast as possible because it's very possible that they also messaged 4 other hosts. And if you're not one of the first people to respond to them, one of those other 4 hosts that they message might give them their attention much quicker and actually snag that reservation out from under you because you didn't respond fast enough. That could cost you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. I have probably lost out on tens of thousands of dollars over the course of my hosting because I just wasn't fast enough at responding to people because I had a 9-to-5 job, wife, dog, normal life. You know, I'm human. I can't be glued to my phone every single day. And in this business, time is money. So if you have the right property management tool, what it can do is instead of you having to respond lightning fast, it can send out a message to that guest and say, hey, Caleb, I see that you've sent me a message here. Give me a couple moments to answer your question and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. That right there already makes that potential guest feel a little better because they're like, oh, okay, I've been heard. They hear me and I'll just kind of sit tight until that host gets back to me. That little function right there can set you apart from all your competition in the area. Another really common question that I get is what about cleaning? How can I manage cleaners for 14 different properties? You know, how do you do it, Rob? And here's the short answer, I don't. The right property management tool can help you do that by actually sending out automated text messages and email alerts to your cleaning crew. It can send them the schedule. It can let them know when people are checking in, checking out, even whenever people book your place. So that cleaner has a heads up that they have to schedule you, in to their schedule. Pretty standard. There are some property management tools that will even get super, I mean, there's like hundreds of features within all the platforms that exist out there, but the right PMS can even have financial reporting data that basically tracks how much money you're making. You can track expenses and all that kind of stuff if you really want to be in the weeds of your financials for your short-term rental business. So there are so many aspects of your business that you can automate through the right property management system. These are just a few of the ones that I use. I don't necessarily use the financial reporting as much because I actually have a bookkeeper that helps me track the expenses, but just goes to show you that really the possibilities are endless and it just is going to come down to your personal style on how much you want to micromanage or how much you want to give away. For me, it was very tough for me to give away so many aspects of my control to robots, if you will.
Robots, huh? Robots.
A lot of hosts, including myself, are very stubborn about relinquishing control because in some regards it really feels like ultimately you're giving up a little bit of the quality of your listing. But I think that when you really spend a lot of time fine-tuning and optimizing your automations and all the different functions and triggers inside of your property management system, it can actually improve the quality of your listing. Man, you're stuntman 101 over here. Guys, give it up for Caleb in the comments.
I have no idea what I'm doing, but I know I'm doing it really, really well.
If you really think about it, honestly, the quality of your communication and hosting go up pretty significantly whenever you use a property management system because there's not as many things falling through the crack. For me, I didn't want to give up so many aspects of hosting, and so I didn't really enable the use of a property management tool at the beginning of hosting because I was like, oh, I can do it. I can do it all. And I could, honestly, for the first 1, 2, 3, 4-ish listings, I was really doing a good job managing everything just manually, if you will. But then once we added listing 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, then you can start to see how things fall through the cracks. Guests start sending you messages and you don't respond, and then they'll leave you a 3 or 4 star for bad communication. Then you get hurt and you're just like, wow, what the heck? Well, how can I be a better host? And a lot of the times it just comes down to recognizing that we can't do it all. And that's fine. That's totally fine. I think the faster you recognize that, the faster you'll start making a little bit more money on Airbnb. So with all of this said, obviously I'm a big fan of just using tools to make your business as efficient as possible. I guess the other question that needs to be answered is, can you automate everything? Can you automate your entire Airbnb business? And as much as I'd love to say you can, the harsh truth is that you can't. But I do think that you can come pretty close. And I'll give you a couple of examples with this. So let's say that you wanted to automate your messaging, right? So let's say that Caleb books your place. You can schedule a message to go out and say, hey Caleb, thanks for booking a stay at Casita Conejo. I've got you down for 2 guests on January 20th. We'll see you soon. The day that Caleb is gonna check in, I can also send a message that says, hey, hope you're looking forward to your stay. Down below is a house manual. In there, you'll find all the info that you need to check in. It's a super easy self-check-in process. Now, what you can't automate against is whenever Caleb responds to those messages. So we can use automations to make our hosting lives easier, but we can't necessarily use them as a crutch. Because if Caleb then responds and says, hey man, I'm really excited about my stay today. By the way, do you have a can opener? Well, there is no tool that you can put in place to answer that highly specific question, right? And so that's where you still have to have what I call a bird's eye view. I mean, I didn't coin the term bird's eye view, but like in respect to hosting, you want to have a bird's eye view of your business where you can swoop in and help anytime that you need to, but you don't necessarily want to be on the ground level putting out fires. That's why we build teams and automations. So you still have to respond to people whenever they ask highly specific questions, because if you don't, then yeah, look, will Caleb survive if he doesn't find out about the can opener? Caleb, are you going to survive? Yes? No, you're not going to. Well, in most cases, Caleb is going to survive if he doesn't find out about the freaking can opener, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be happy about it, and he might ding you. He might give you a 4-star review because you didn't get back to him, so he went out and bought a can opener. Then when he got to the Airbnb, he found out that there was a can opener, so now he spent $5 for no freaking reason, right? And so now you've just possibly tainted his experience in some capacity. Messaging is a really great example of something that you can automate, but only about 90% of it. You still need to allot time to the other 10% where you are answering some of these more nitty-gritty questions. So with that said, no, you can't automate everything. Sorry, I know that there are a lot of Airbnb influencers out there that are like, hey, automate your business. You can do it and make millions too. I'm gonna keep it a little bit more real with you. Now, with that said, a good PMS should help you chop out about 50% of the time that you're allotting towards hosting. So for me, I try to obviously spend as little time as possible, you know, in the weeds of my business because I've got so many other businesses out there. So I'm trying to spend about 1 to 2 hours of my week on my Airbnb business. And I've got different people that are helping me manage it and everything because I've got a channel and businesses and all that kind of stuff. But what I really want aspiring hosts to aim for is maybe 3 to 5 hours per week per property when you're starting out. And then I want you to optimize your business to the point where hopefully you're spending 1 to 2 hours per week per property. And then you get to the point where you mega automate everything and you spend 1 to 2 hours a week hosting on Airbnb in general. So I'm kind of curious. I know that there are a lot of hosts that watch my channel. How much time do you spend managing your business? Leave me a comment down below because some people are like, I spend 30 hours a week. And some people are like me, they spend 1 to 5 hours a week, depending on how crazy that week is. Because, you know, as much as I like to say I have everything like down pat, ready to rock and like very automated, whenever it rains, it pours. And then the opposite is true. Whenever it's calm, it's just like you don't hear a peep from certain listings. So you just never know what you're going to get with Airbnb, which honestly I think is my favorite part about hosting because there's always a new situation to learn from. There are always people that you have to learn how to maneuver when they're unreasonable or they're super angry or they're very petty or whatever, right? So for me, I often feel like I've seen it all, but honestly, I feel like we're just scratching the surface here. We're at the tip of the iceberg, but I'm really excited because the more crazy situations I endure, the more crazy situations I can teach you guys about. So that's my spiel on property management tools, automating, like why they're important. The pros, there really aren't a lot of cons. I don't think there are any cons, but that's my general POV on a property management system. I still know a lot of hosts that have like 10, 15 listings that are doing everything manually. That kind of stuff always melts my mind to hear because I know a lot of them and they're all very smart. And I'm just like, dude, don't you want your time back? If you could have your time back and it would cost you $7 to $50 a month to do that, why wouldn't you? It's a very obvious trade-off for me. So now that the beautiful golden hour has ended, why don't we head inside so that Caleb can rest his weak little arms, Mr. Violently Shaking over here, and do a quick walkthrough of my favorite PMS, Guesty for Hosts.
All right, we're back in the office here, and typically this is like the part of the video where I'd be like, this video is brought to you. Now we do a 60-second ad integration, but I figured why not change it up and actually show you how the platform works. Again, I do want to say that this is the platform that I actually use.
use. I think that's really important to notate. So I do want to say a couple of things here. If you've ever heard me talk about your porter, that is now the Guesty brand. And there are two Guesty products. There are Guesty for hosts, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. That is for hosts that have between 1 to 3 listings. And then there's another product called Guesty for pros, and that's for people that have 4+ listings. People that are working professionals in property management or just overall short-term rentals. Now let's go through Guesty for hosts. So whenever you log in, this is going to be your main portal here. And you're going to see here that this is your daily activity. So this just gives you an overview of what's happening at your property. So we have someone expected to check out today, Monday, January 17th, out of Casita Conejo, and then someone is expected to check in today at Casita Conejo. So I now know that I have a same-day turn. So I need my cleaners to show up, get it ready for the guests here. They have no wiggle room. They can't come clean tomorrow or anything like that, right? So it doesn't really affect my day-to-day necessarily, but it is nice to know when I am back-to-back because that gives me time to have maintenance done on the property, or pest control can come into the property or anything like that. Now let's jump into our calendar tab here, and you can see Casita Conejo. I have bookings here for the next couple of days, kind of wide open here for the next month, and then I have some bookings here in February as well. I'm not super worried about that. Historically, during this season in Joshua Tree for me, I get a lot of last-minute bookings. Like I would say 60 to 80% of my bookings happen the day of or 1 to 3 days before. So this will pretty much give you an overview of all of your properties. So let's say you have 3 different properties here, and it just gives you a top-down view of your property and how busy they are during the different seasonalities, if you will. Then you've got your cleaning tab here. And again, this is probably gonna be one of the more clutch features that you use with the Guesty platform. I like a lot of the different functionalities here. So you can run cleaning reports, you can do checklists. So if you want to create a new checklist for your cleaner, let's say you want to do Conejo deep clean, because you want to do a deep clean every so often, and then you can just add different things here, right? So you can just make sure that your cleaner is showing a little bit of love to certain items. So we can say things like clean fridge, clean microwave, dust baseboards, remove bodies from closets, and clean behind toilets. And you can create this checklist and actually send that to your cleaner. So for Conejo deep, let me rename that fast. Conejo deep clean. All right, there we go. I forget I said anything. So save. So there we go. So I can then copy this list. So that could be a cleaning list that you then send to your cleaning crew. Now, I think that perhaps the most interesting feature here are your cleaning reminders. You can actually send reminders to your team, just like it says right there. And basically where this really saves you a lot of time is that you're not having to text your cleaners when people are checking in and checking out. You can have Guesty for hosts do this for you. So you can see here, every time I get a new reservation, it sends a daily task list to my cleaner. And then whenever I have a checkout, it also sends that daily task list to that cleaner. So I just want to kind of show you how this works logistically. You can create or select different task types that you'll then assign to your cleaners. So for example, I have here cleaning. So you'll have 3 different triggers here for your automation. So you can choose between your new reservation, check-in, and checkout. So let's select checkout here, and you can even get more specific. And you can say after a guest checks out. So the moment a guest checks out, you can send a reminder and even choose the time. So I've got here 12 p.m. So at noon, on noon the day that a guest checks out, which is about 2 hours after they check out, you can send a reminder. So I'm gonna select on the day that the guest checks out, and then go continue here, so that I can actually choose the listing here. So let's say Casita Conejo, and then I can continue with that listing. So then you can choose a teammate here, which in theory are your cleaners, and you can add a teammate if you don't have them in the system already. So let's say it's Ron Frugal Man, Ron Frugal Man 223 at hotmail.com. Phone number 713-444-1. Okay, whatever. I'm sure that's a real number. So then you can see that I can actually send it to him here via text message or email. So I'll hit OK. And then I can actually choose what information to send him. So the base messaging that you can send here is that they have a cleaning on this checkout date for listing name. And those are tags. So it's going to go ahead and change that checkout date depending on when it is. And then for this, it would say Conejo in that text message. I can also add things like checkout date, number of guests, confirmation date, all that kind of stuff if I want to. My cleaners just prefer those first 2. And then you can continue. And if I have a checklist here that I created, remember like the Conejo deep clean, I can add that here if I really want to micromanage it. But typically my cleaners have their own lists, and I'll just say here, continue without checklist. And then here's an overview of all the things that I'm sending them. So check in, check out, date of next check-in, next reservation, number of guests. That's an important one so that they know how many towels to put out, extra pillow sheets, all that kind of stuff. Continue. And since I'm making this rule today, I can actually send them a text and email with all of the future cleans that are currently scheduled in my calendar. So confirm. Your teammate will receive daily messages about scheduled tasks. Great. Boom, easy peasy. Then Ron Frugalman will get that text message, and then he'll add it to his calendar or his diary or whatever he wants to use to track his cleaning.
And then one of the final tabs here that I wanted to show you is messaging. And what I really like about this is that they have a unified inbox. So not only is it my personal listings, it also shows all the messages from all of the different listings that I'm a co-host on. So I don't even necessarily have to use the Airbnb or VRBO app if I don't want to. I can keep it all within Guesty. Now, a few more things to talk through here. We've got our automated messaging. So I can actually schedule messages to people, and I'll show you what that looks like. So I've got a welcome message here. So basically what that means is whenever someone books my place, I say, hey, thanks for booking, kind of like I was talking about earlier. So I'll actually show you what this looks like. Go here, I'll go to template, and let me edit here. So whenever someone books a stay at Casita Conejo, they will get this message right here. Thanks for booking a stay at Casita Conejo. First name, gonna be replaced with their first name. Your reservation starts on this day. Friendly reminder that this house runs on septic. Do not flush anything other than toilet paper, thank you. So if there are any important things that I need them to know, I will send it to them in that initial message. And you got all your different tags here that you can include. And obviously this is all very adjustable based on your specific listing. You can choose to send more messages or less messages. But as you can see here, I pretty much just do 3. I have a welcome message whenever they book, a check-in message the day of, a checkout message the day before that gives them any pertinent information that they need to know, like taking out trash, washing dishes, and then I also have a review. So I just want to show you how easy it is to create an automated message. So we're going to go to scheduled messaging here, start automating your repeating messages. So I'm going to schedule my review prompt. And what this basically means is a couple of days after a guest checks out, I want to send them a message that says, hey, Caleb, I hope you enjoyed your stay. My business depends on 5-star reviews. I'd really appreciate it if you took a moment to review your stay at Casita Conejo. And I found that by doing this, my 5-star reviews went up significantly because I was reminding people that I'm just a person and I need their help in reviewing my place. And I also realized that by asking a 5-star review, people felt bad about leaving me anything less than a 5-star review. So it's kind of a win-win. And one of the other things is if you don't ask for a 5-star review and someone just reviews you off the top of their head without hearing from you how much you need it for the survival of your business, people are less likely to leave you a 3 or 4-star review. So I'll show you how to do that really fast. So we're gonna hit schedule new message. This is gonna be a platform message. So this would be going out on Airbnb because Casita Conejo is exclusively on Airbnb. And then we'll do checkout. And I'll show you why. So I can do after a guest checks out, I can select how many days after they check out I want to send this. So I want it to be like fresh on their mind, but not necessarily like so far after that they can't remember their stays. So I'll say 2 days after someone stays, I'll send them a message. We'll go to Casita Conejo. Then we're gonna do Conejo review because I already have that template in my system. And so basically 2 days after a guest checks out at noon, they will get this message from me that says, hey, I hope you enjoyed your stay at my house. I'm trying really hard to maintain superhost status and rely 100% on the 5-star reviews of my amazing guests, blah, 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 right? So then confirm it, and then it gives me the schedule here of when it's gonna send out all these different things. So then I hit confirm, automation rule created, boom, good to go. And then we'll see it pop up here in my scheduled messages. So we got welcome, check-in, Conejo checkout, and then Conejo review. And then boom, easy peasy. And then yeah, I'll just show you a few of the other things. They have a website builder here. So if you ever want to go off platform and have www.casitaconejo.com, you can actually build that website within Guesty for Hosts. You can do your income reports. This is where you can actually see how much your different properties made. So we can see view income reports here. You don't have any income reports yet. Please click here to create your first report. We'll go Casita Conejo, continue, and it will actually pull that information from Airbnb and VRBO and put it all together for you. I'm a self-operator model, continue. Type in report name, Conejo report. And then boom, it'll show me how much I made in my last complete month. So the date range we have here is December 1st through December 31st. That month, my net payout was $9,183. I had $284 in platform fees. And then that month I paid $1,440 in cleaning fees. And then it'll even show you things like your occupancy rate. And as you can see here in December, I had 93.6% occupancy. And then my average daily rate was $275.48. So yeah, like I said, you can get pretty technical with the financial data here. Obviously, a lot of this data is in Airbnb, but if I'm being honest, this is laid out way nicer than Airbnb. Airbnb is a little finicky sometimes. So like I said, website builder, income reports, you can even track your expenses, other key statistics. If you want to do smart pricing, like if you don't like the Airbnb pricing tool, which no host on planet Earth does, you can even use their dynamic pricing feature if you want. And smart locks is one of my favorite ones. And that's where you can actually integrate with locks like the Slage on code so that every single time there's a new reservation, it auto-generates a new code for every single new guest, and that new code can be set to be the last 4 digits of that guest's phone number so that they can easily remember it. So that's it. That's the walkthrough. I mean, obviously there's so much more I can dive into, but this is YouTube and I do try to keep my videos to be a short, snappy 10 minutes or so. And this was probably like, what do you think, Caleb, like 12 minutes or so? Somewhere in there? We're not going to talk about automations today. We're going to actually talk about the team that you need to build to successfully run your Airbnb and who the key players are.
There are 6 key players. The first one we're gonna talk about is definitely the most important, but there are definitely a few of these that I know you're gonna be like, what? I didn't even think about that role. So you're gonna wanna make sure to stick around to the very end, because I promise you, if you do, you'll be able to crush your short-term rental from anywhere in the universe, so long as you can get Wi-Fi. Let's go. You can name your team anything you want. David Green, when he talks about long distance investing, he calls it his core 4. But for me, I call my Airbnb team the Airbnb Avengers, because every single one of them are so crucial for my success, all right? And my #1 Avenger for any property are my cleaners. The cleaners are what I consider the eyes and ears of my operation. A lot of people tend to skimp out on their cleaners, and I think that is actually a really bad idea. If you skimp out on your cleaners, I promise you, it will cost you thousands of dollars in the long run. But the reason that hiring a cleaner is so important is A, you can't do all the cleaning yourself. You might be able to do the cleanings if you own 1 property and you live nearby. But once you scale to 2, 3, 4, 5, it becomes increasingly difficult to do that, and it's certainly not recommended. But to truly run as an Airbnb operator at scale, you have to quickly replace yourself in every component of the business as fast as possible. The cleaner is gonna be the best way to do that. The reason your cleaner is so important is because the cleaner is the person that's gonna be at the property the most out of anyone in the team, including yourself. If you think about your availability calendar and how often you're gonna be booked, you're gonna be seeing anywhere from 5 to, let's say, 10 sets of reservations every single month at any given Airbnb. And so naturally, that means that your unit needs to be cleaned 5 to 10 times per month. And so your cleaner is gonna be doing that. Now, ideally, when you're hiring your cleaner, you're not actually hiring someone to just come in and clean. You're also hiring someone to come back and report to you anything that might be wrong with the property. It could be a loose chair, it could be a broken fridge handle. It could also be just damages from the guest. If a guest damages an aspect of your home, how are you gonna find out? Because most guests aren't gonna fess up to it. And so you need your cleaner to report that back to you. And so this is why I say they are the eyes and ears of your operation. They're truly keeping track of every single thing of your Airbnb, and so you really need them to report back to you with every little thing that could be wrong. Most of the times and most of the failures that I've had in my Airbnb, because I've had many, I've hosted tens of thousands of people at this point.
People know me.
Is lack of accountability and lack of reporting metrics with my cleaning team. And what this specifically means is oftentimes I've told my cleaners, hey, I want you to clean and report back if anything is broken. But early on when I was having failures, I wasn't properly briefing them on the scope of their job, making sure that they were cleaning not just the inside, but the outside of the property. I wasn't providing them checklists. I wasn't doing anything like that. So when you have this loosey-goosey relationship where you're like, hey, clean my house, something broken, let me know, then a lot of stuff tends to fall through the cracks. There've been many times where I've checked into my Airbnb and pretty much shrieked in horror at the disrepair of so many items of that. And I'm sure a lot of you can probably relate to that. Why on earth would my cleaner not tell me this? And most of the time it's because you didn't tell them to tell you that specific thing. And so if you really start thinking about the cleaner of your business, it really does go beyond cleaning. It's almost like they're a cleaner and a reporter of everything with your property. And this is why you don't want to skimp, because a cleaner comes into an Airbnb and they say, my job is to clean first and foremost. They don't pay me for the other stuff. So if you go to your cleaner and you say, hey, well, I need you to clean the windows, I need you to sweep outside, I need you to run through this checklist, I need you to tighten any loose chairs, and I need you to clean, but instead of paying you the $200 you asked for, I want to pay you $150, guess what? You're gonna have a failing Airbnb with 3 and 4-star reviews across the board. So this is why I really stress the importance of paying your cleaners what they're worth and not nickel and diming them on every single thing. It's really no surprise that my most expensive cleaners are by far my best cleaners. In Joshua Tree, California, I have a 300 square foot tiny home, charged me $85 to clean that house. Really expensive for a house that small, but I have never once in the 300 reviews gotten a complaint about cleaning. I've gotten the exact opposite, and that is an expense that has been worth it for me because they crush it for me time and time again. So that's gonna be the first key player on your team. Spend a little bit more time on this than I probably will for the rest of the team, but I wanted to because they are the most important person on your team, okay? The second person on your team, also very important, is your handyman. Maybe I need to recheck my biases. Or your handy woman. Listen, your handy person, whoever it is. The reason they're important is because they're gonna fix stuff. Now, let's just go back to your cleaners, right? I said they're the eyes and the ears of your operation. They're gonna say, hey Rob, hey Timothy, hey Carol, hey Karen.
One eternity later.
Hey Rob, this thing is broken, it needs to be fixed. Now, if it's super simple, your cleaner might be willing to fix it for you. So a light bulb needs to be changed or a battery needs to be swapped up. Most cleaners are gonna be okay with doing that. But once you need an actual tool to do something,
something, this is typically my rule of thumb, like a screwdriver, they're most of the time not gonna mess with it. They'll say, hey Rob, this needs to be repaired. They'll communicate that to you, and then guess what? Call your handyman to come in and fix things. Now you gotta be pretty particular with your handyman or handywoman or handy person, because at the end of the day, handy people, in general, generalization here, they are not the most business-oriented, organized, or punctual people. And so you wanna find someone that you can really depend on, but at the same time, they might actually be very dependable. They just may be very busy. And here's what I've always found. If they're amazing and super dependable, then they are always busy. And so when you need that handy person, they're so busy that they can't actually get to your work. And so this is actually where I get into this groove specifically for this role, where I tend to try to find 1, 2, or 3 handymen that can help me out on a rotating basis. When I can find one that's just always solid and dependable, awesome. But I like to have a bit of a roster with handy people because they're just always out in the field fixing stuff. And I think there's so many variables within their job that keep them delayed at their job site, thus making it hard for them to be punctual for the jobs that you need. And this is really the hard part about Airbnbs, is that people tend to pay premium rates. And so when something is broken, you need it fixed super fast, or else that person is gonna be demanding a refund. Now, a lot of you might be asking, well, Rob, why do you have 2 or 3 handymen, but not 2 or 3 cleaners? And the reason being is, when I find a cleaner, this isn't kind of like a, hey, when I need you, I'll call you. Is that cool? Whenever you're open, are you willing to come and clean for me? It's like a, hey, you're my cleaner. You're my girlfriend. Exclusivity here. We're not dating. I don't want you dating around with their other Airbnbs. When I say my place is open, I need you there. I need that commitment for my cleaner, because cleaners are the backbone of my business, that I can't risk them saying, oh, I'm busy today, Rob, I'm sorry. Like, I'm always looking for cleaners that have the systems in place to make sure they're always at my properties at checkout. This to me is a non-negotiable. There are some of my properties in my portfolio where I have a backup, but it's a very, very rare thing. But the handy crew in general, actually what they call this in prison, the handy crew in general, there's a favorite, and then there's a second string, and then the third string. But really, I just can't stress enough how important they are, because things do break in Airbnbs all the freaking time. And a lot of the times I try to have systems in place that allow a guest to sort of problem solve on their own, but every so often I need a handyman to step in and get stuff done for me. And that's gonna be your second key player. And if you really think about it, the cleaners clean everything, they tell you when anything is broken, your handy people fix everything, and between these 2 people, they are the lifeblood of your business. But there are still 4 others that you're gonna need if you wanna survive this business. Number 3, do you like bugs? Do you like roaches and bed bugs and ticks and every other insect that exists? No, you probably don't. And guess who hates them more than you? Your guests. And guess who will complain? They see a little tiny cockroach this big that's not even inside your house but outside your house, and they'll ask for a refund, and they'll complain to the Airbnb that you have bed bugs even though it's obviously a cockroach and it's 3 miles away from your Airbnb. Yeah, those are your guests. That's how guests act. When they see a cockroach, they're like, holy crap, the world's gonna end. Rob, I demand a back massage and a refund. And so that's why you need this third key player, which is gonna be your pest control person. Plain and simple, this should be a proactive thing that you're doing at all of your properties. There's nothing worse than getting a bug call. It really is just such an awful inconvenience just at any time. Interrupted dinners, interrupted movies at the theater, all because of a freaking little bug. This person is worth their weight in gold. You can pay anywhere from 50 to 80 bucks every single month, and they will come out weekly or bi-weekly or monthly to come spray your place. But a really nice thing about your pest control guy is that when you pay him this monthly fee, it does also usually include emergency visits. So if there's a mouse at your property, or if there's like a roach or like an ant problem, and you call your pest control people, so long as it's not at night and it's during the week, they'll usually come out that day or the next day and remedy that. And oftentimes that just puts a guest at ease that you're even trying to fix the problem. I had many times where a guest has reported a bug problem, and I got my pest control out there. They came out and they're like, we put out a little sugar ant trap out there, and then the guests were like super grateful for it, and I didn't have to pay extra for it because I was already paying the monthly fee. There's something you take away from this video, is that most of the time you need to be proactive, not reactive. You can proactively find solutions before anything actually becomes a problem, versus trying to solve a problem during a guest stay, and not only solve that problem, but deal with the disgruntled guest. And that's why your pest control person is crucial. Number 4, very important, required for most people, but not gonna be applicable to everyone, and that's your lawn maintenance crew, your landscapers, people that mow your yard, the people that pull out weeds. This is really important too, because a lot of people tend to focus on the inside of their property, and then they make the outside of their property somewhat presentable, then they oftentimes forget that there's a yard, and that yard needs to be cut. There's nothing more unappealing than paying 500 bucks a night, showing up to your Airbnb, and then thinking, oh, this place looks like it was deserted years ago. And you don't want someone's first impression
impression to think that you have a janky place. I actually just went to my properties yesterday and saw that the landscaper never showed up, didn't actually cut the yard, so it's never been cut before, and the grass is like this tall. Luckily, it was just a small strip of grass on the sides of the house. You wouldn't really see it unless you looked over, but nonetheless, it was still there, and I was mortified because I was like, oh my gosh, all the first impressions of people, if they saw this place, is that I hadn't cut the grass, and it was a super embarrassing moment of self-reflection. I'm gonna tell you right now that in general, every single one of my landscaping crews have been Hispanic, and they typically require cash. Because of this, it requires a little bit of problem solving on how to actually get my landscaping crew paid. The same is sometimes the case with my cleaning crew. It can be a little tough to pay them sometimes, so that's why when I'm negotiating the cleaning crew, they have to have an electronic way I can pay them. But my landscapers, all in all, none of them are usually on Venmo, Zelle, Cash App, anything like that. I always try to find a landscaper that can work with me and sign up for something like that because they are the hardest ones to pay. Again, I don't want to overgeneralize here. Mexican, just a friendly reminder for those of you that are probably writing angry comments right now that's like, how dare you listen. Sometimes you just got to know the landscape you're working with. You know what I'm saying? But here's what I really love about landscapers. They usually end up being one of the most, if not the most reliable person on my team, because landscapers have routes around the city. They're usually organized by day. They have certain routes every single week. And so they never really miss a landscaping appointment, except for the guy that never showed up to my place. But I didn't have a working relationship with him. I didn't know him. So yeah, in that particular case, it didn't work out. But when I know my dudes and I pay them, they always show up. Just make sure that you have a system for paying them and understand that most of the time, they're not gonna let you or be comfortable with you issuing a 1099. So when you're hiring them, you may want to bring up the W-9 conversation. This actually goes towards everyone on the team, especially your cleaners. This is always a very finicky conversation with your cleaners. By law, if you pay someone more than 600 bucks every single year, you got to issue them a 1099. It's always a finicky conversation. And if you don't issue the 1099, then I'm relatively certain you're going to be unable to write off that income. And then you'll be taxed on that income instead of being able to write off that expense. So super important note there. Also, just a quick note here. Remember how I said cleaners don't like to clean inside and outside oftentimes and you run into issues there? You can negotiate with your landscaper to be the keeper of the outdoor aspect of your property too. Just note that that might come with the cost. Number 5 is going to be the sexy pool guy. Listen, it could just be a pool guy, but if it's a sexy pool guy, that's great. Good for you, Margaret. You're getting out there. I'm happy for you. Anyway, you need a pool person, and this is really only gonna be applicable if you have a hot tub or a pool. If you don't, then you can, I guess, fast forward, but I'll get through this one relatively quickly. Listen, people book your Airbnbs specifically because you have a pool or a hot tub, and so if you have those things and they are dirty, if there's 3 leaves in the pool, they will ask you to send out your pool person to come and clean it versus just grabbing the net themselves and cleaning it, right? And this is why your pool person is so important. You need them to show up. You need to make sure that they clean. But the thing is, sometimes you might have like, I don't know, a really weird span of time. You might have 4 or 5 days between guest days that come before the next time the pool guy's supposed to come out, and then the guests arrive and then it's dirty and then they get mad. So you need a pool person or a hot tub person that is willing to come out on call. They do typically charge a fee for this. This isn't like pest control where they come out for free for house calls and emergency calls. Pool people do charge a fee, and pools are something that you're not gonna have as much of an issue with, to be honest, but hot tubs are real finicky. You've heard me on the channel over the years. You know that I really freaking hate hot tubs, but they are super important to boosting your revenue. They are an amenity that people seek out, and they do break down all the time. Things go wrong with hot tubs all the time. You need a reliable hot tub person. This is so important, really, honestly, more than some of these other things, because if you don't get that hot tub clean ASAP, your guest will ask for a refund, and sometimes you'll have to refund your guest $300, $400, $500, $800. I've had to do it so many times over my career, which is why I hate hot tubs. But when you find someone that's willing to get stuff done for you and make sure that you have a properly cleaned and pristine hot tub, they are worth their weight in gold. Last one, number 6. This is someone you hopefully never call, but it is an important vendor to have when you need them, and that's your contractor. I had a contractor build my tiny house in Joshua Tree, California. Never need to call him except for 1 or 2 times where I've had a roof leak, the same problem, and I call him and said, dude, there's a roof leak, there's guests here, can you fix it? And he was like, yes, stand by my work, I'm gonna get my roof guy out there. So when you think about contractors, they typically have a team. They have their own Avengers that they use when they're bidding out jobs, and they subcontract out and they make a fee on top of that. So in my particular instance, my contractor called the person that literally installed the component of the home that was faulty and causing the roof leak at my property. Both times they got addressed very, very quickly. Hopefully, you'll never really need a contractor, but there are some things that fall outside of the scope of a handyman. Handyman can do things like patch up drywall, maybe do a small roof patch, but if you need a new roof, then your contractor needs to be the person to do that. It's not really gonna be a handy person. Handymen are typically the people that you're paying anywhere from $0 to, let's say, $1,000 max. But once you get into a job that's like $1,000 to $10,000, $6,000 and beyond, that's when your contractor comes into play. I probably don't need to harp on why your contractor needs to be reliable. Just understand that there are so many horror stories out there of contractors taking your money and leaving town, which is kind of what happened to me when I built my mini golf course. I paid a contractor and he walked out $6,000 into the job, and I had to bring in a whole nother contractor to fix that problem for me. So understand that your contractor is not going to be the cheapest person on your team. They are the most expensive, but they are also the most expensive if you make them the cheapest person on your team. And so I'll end with this. You might be asking yourself, Rob, how do I find any of these Avengers? I'm gonna tell you this, firsthand referrals. If you can get a firsthand referral from your realtor, that's gonna be the #1 way to do it. Or if you're in a community of hosts, or if you're like in my Facebook group, the Airbnb Besties, for example, you can post there and you can say, hey, I'm in Joshua Tree, I need a handyman, does anyone have recommendations? And then in theory, you'll get a ton of recommendations. So if you can get a recommendation from someone who has used that vendor in the past, your likelihood for success is significantly higher. And that is it. Those are your Airbnb Avengers. Those are the people that you need on your team, and the people that are gonna make up 80% of all the work that goes into self-managing your short-term rental, whether you have 1 or 40. Very early on in my real estate career, I was starting this Airbnb thing, and very quickly I was out of money. And when you have no money, it's hard to progress in the world of Airbnb. So I quickly started to realize the importance of partnering up with others and using OPM, a very key principle that you should learn early on, the concept of other people's money and how to use it and how to use debt to structure your portfolio so that hopefully you can scale from 0 to $10 million too. There really is no right or wrong, right? I'm always gonna say that. There's only what's right for you and the partner that you're working out the terms with, okay? So I'm gonna start with probably the most fundamental partnership that I ever did starting an Airbnb. And that's basically this concept of you fund it, I run it. I also say you're the bankroll, I'm the brains. So in this instance, you work with someone that's really curious, that wants to get into real estate and the financing oftentimes. That's how I structure a lot of my deals getting started. And you're basically bringing the sweat equity. So this is a really interesting way to get into real estate with low to no money down. So effectively, here's how I worked it out with different sets of partners. Again, there are so many variations on this specific strategy or technique. So you'll have to customize it based on your preferences. So a potential partner would approach me and they would say, hey, Rob, I see that you're doing this Airbnb thing. I'd like to get into Airbnb. I've got capital, but I have no idea how to do this. And they knew that I had several successful short-term rentals. That's why they were coming to me. So I would say, great, here's what we're gonna do. I am gonna help find the property. I'm gonna find the realtor. I will help you even find the loan officer. I will work through the entire process of making sure that questions are answered during the loan process, that the communication with the real estate agent never lapses, and I'll be analyzing the deal to make sure that it pencils out and makes us money in the long run, right? That's an important aspect of having a successful partnership. So in this instance, the partners were the ones that were also bringing the borrowing power and the capital. So for me, my job was to run the entire property and teach them how to do this. And so hopefully, they didn't have to partner up with me again. They could go off and do this on their own. This was a really good deal for me back in the day because I effectively got a free house for teaching people how to start a short-term rental business. So remember, I talked about variations to this. Here's how I originally structured this deal with my first sets of partners. I would say, hey, I'm gonna run this property and it's gonna cash flow, and I'll actually never take a profit from this property until you're paid back 100%. And so this sort of alleviated the idea of like, well, what happens if I buy the house and you don't do your job and you kind of suck at it and blah, blah, blah. I would say, hey, no, I'm gonna do my job. I'm gonna make sure that this property absolutely crushes it because I want you to get paid back as soon as possible, because when you get paid back, I start taking the paycheck. And I think this is a really good show of faith. While I didn't necessarily have skin in the game, I did have this sort of carrot dangling that the more I crushed it with this property, the faster I could actually start making money for it. If it was a 25% cash on cash return, for example, I wouldn't really ever get a paycheck from this property for 4 years. Now, luckily for that property, it was like a 93% cash on cash return in the first year. Those partners actually got all their money back the first year, which is really, really cool. So now I finally get to dip into the profits and get a paycheck from that property. But I had to work for it in a long time, and I had to deal with a lot of cranky guests, and I had to deal with bears breaking into my house, and I had to deal with bears eating my hot tub cover.
Now it's trying to eat the filter.
Okay, all right. All that kind of stuff for a while before I got to see the fruits of my labor. Now, the other variation to this, which I honestly wish I would have negotiated in at the time, but again, any deal is a good deal to me at that time. You could also negotiate like a, hey, you get the cash flow right away, but I am gonna charge a small management fee to run this property, right? Because then at the very least, 2 years if I'm running this property, if I was charging a 7 to 10% management fee, at least I could make a little bit of money for having to work so hard, because running a short-term rental business is really tiring, but it's even more tiring when you're not making any money, right? From a logistical standpoint, since these partners were on the title of the property, we created an LLC, and that's how we formed our partnership. I'm not gonna give any advice there because I'm not a lawyer. I don't know if you know this about me. I'm not legally certified to give you legal advice.
all makes sense. Yeah, so go talk to your lawyer about it. But a few different ways to structure that partnership. So something I want to bring up about this is that I just want you to make sure that you're sort of taking future you into consideration when you make a deal like this. This was a very good deal for me starting out, right? I mean, it's amazing. I got a couple free houses doing it this way, but the really hard part about these deals is that I went on to really explode my portfolio. The partners ended up going and buying more short-term rentals as well. But not only did my portfolio explode, but I started the Rob Belt channel, and I became the Bigger Pockets co-host, and then I created a whole education company, Host Camp, and I have all these different businesses that actually take up a significant amount of my time. And so now I'm managing this property over here for free. And so I wasn't really ever considering that I would be a very successful real estate investor. And so it's actually a little tougher for me to manage this one property. This was a partnership that I got into, and again, really good deal for me at the time. Still a good deal for me now, but it does require more attention from me because I entered into this partnership where my expectation was to perform. So no matter how much my empire grows over here, I still got to bring it over here, right? So to be honest, I'm not sure that's something that you can predict or plan for, but it is something I want you to keep in mind. Like if you're in the mindset of like, I'm going all in on real estate and I'm gonna do this thing forever, maybe just consider paying yourself a management fee. I think that's sort of what I'm getting at. Like if I was getting paid a little bit of money of a management fee, then all the late night calls and all the bear calls and all that kind of stuff wouldn't necessarily be so tough. So let's talk about the second way that you can do this. As I began to sort of graduate, I didn't necessarily like the idea of never getting paid. Started to realize this after doing it a couple of times, right? So I worked out what's called the waterfall. This is a very common term and strategy when you're paying back your investors. This was like the 75-25 model, right? So we'd go to an investor, we would say, hey, we want 50% equity, we want 50% of the cash flow, we want you to finance it. That investor, most of the time was gonna say, hey, if I'm paying for it and it's in my name, you have no risk. Why would I do this? Like you could always walk away at any time, whatever, right? And I would say, well, I'm putting in all this work. I'm the one that's getting it launched. I'm the one that's furnishing it. I'm the one that's doing all this, right? So it actually is a significant amount of my time to get into this property. So what I would propose to the investor so that, you know, everybody was happy, since I wasn't bringing any cash to the deal, is I would say, look, here's what we'll do. We'll do a 75%, 25% split on the cash flow, all right? And then we'll do a 50-50% split on the equity. I would own a 50% stake in that property. Now, the investor would get 75% of the profits. I would get 25% of the profits up until the investor got paid back fully. And once that investor got their initial investment back, then we would split cash flows 50-50. Now you can also work it out in the back end. I mean, the paperwork gets pretty like, you know, granular if you do this, but you can also work that same waterfall split out with the equity too, right? If the investor doesn't want to give you equity right out the gate, you can work it out to where you get 25% stake in the property, 25% cash flows up until that investor is paid back. Then effectively your other 25 vests and you become a 50% partner equity holder officially. And that's another way that you could structure this type of deal. Now, what's interesting about this 75-25 split is that there's actually other ways that you can do this, because we would actually walk into certain deals where the investor, weirdly enough, did not necessarily care about the cash flow. They wanted the equity. They wanted the upside, right? They didn't want us to walk into this deal, own it for 5 years, and then the house doubles in value, and now we just got all this equity for having basically been a glorified property manager. It's kind of like some of the objections that we would hear. That was fine. Like for us, we're always in the mindset of like, hey, we're gonna kill it, and by killing it and bringing value to the partner, we're gonna get a free house out of it, right? So another way that we would structure this is we would say, all right, obviously you care about the equity, you care about the appreciation. So we would actually work out to where they own 75% of the equity of the home, we own 25% of the equity of the home, but we get 75% of the cash flow, 75% of the profits, and they get 25%. So we'd sort of like flip-flop, right? And the reason was they wanted the equity in the home so they could basically get the tax benefits of owning short-term rentals and real estate in general. And while it was important for me to have that, on the flip side, we were getting 75% of the cash flow. They get their tax liability reduced, we get higher cash flow, win-win for everybody. Strategy number 3, I've probably given you like more than 3, but this is just your traditional 50-50 partnership, all right? There's a couple of different ways that you can do this, but let's talk through it. So one example of just a straight 50-50 partnership is you put in 50% of the cash, your partner puts in 50% of the cash, you go and you get a loan together and you run this as a business. Most straightforward version of a partnership. But sometimes you walk into a partnership where you may have a ton of cash, but you got bad DTI, debt to income ratio, you may have bad credit, but your partner has really great borrowing power. And so you may be able to walk into an arrangement where you say, hey, Caleb, let's go in on a loan together. I'm gonna bring the cash, you're gonna bring the borrowing power. And that's sort of one of the really cool symbiotic ways that you can work with somebody. It doesn't have to be 50-50. I mean, I think there's a few ways you can do it. I think you can say, hey, I'll bring 75% of the cash, you bring 25% of the cash, but you bring the borrowing power. I also think that's fair, right? there's a few ways that you can slice a 50-50 partnership. Or you may even be in a scenario where you say, hey, I've got a lot of money, congrats, good for you, must be nice, but I have no time. And this actually goes into that first model we talked about. But you bring on a partner who has a ton of time, but maybe not a lot of money. Maybe your partner can bring all the money for the furnishing so that they have a little bit of skin in the game, and you just approach it as a 50-50 partnership. I've done this several times in my portfolio too. Again, no right or wrong here, it just really depends on the person, right? If you're friends with somebody and you're walking into a partnership, you may want it to be a little bit more equitable so that there's no dissonance or no resentment or anything like that. But when I'm working with just like an investor that I don't know and it's purely business, then at that point, that's when I can be a little bit more stringent and hardline certain terms that I want, right? With someone that I know I'm partnering up with, I'm not really trying to lay down the law in negotiations. Like I want it to be fair for everybody. And of course I want that for an investor too, but an investor is watching out for their best interest and you're watching out for your best interest. And so there's always a little bit more negotiation that may go on with an investor that you're not super acquainted with. So, okay, so that's effectively 3 ways I've structured partnerships. One where I bring no money, and I will say that on that one, that became my most popular model because investors would come to us and we would basically say, you pay for everything. And on top of that, we're gonna charge you what used to be a 7% management fee. We now charge more, but we would say, hey, you bring the money, you bring the borrowing power, we're gonna run it, and then we're gonna charge a 15% management fee so that we are making money along the way because it does take work to manage these properties. This was easily our most popular method. And then you have the waterfall method, in this instance at 25-75, where you pay back your investor first, they get 75% of the cash flow profits, and once they're paid back on their initial investment, that waterfall basically drops to a 50-50 equity and profit stake. And then of course there's the last one we just talked about, the 50-50, a little bit more traditional. Partner brings in 50% of the money, you bring 50% of the money. Your partner brings all the borrowing power, however you want to work it out, but you're basically 50-50 partners on the property that you purchase. So there are gonna be a lot more nuts and bolts to something like that. But actually what I'm starting to move towards now more and more these days is just basically straight debt where I pay an investor back a percentage on their money. So for example, an investor says, hey Rob, I got 100 grand. Instead of me saying, great, let's put that 100 grand into this property, you're gonna finance it, we own this property 50-50, I always have to report back to that investor, there's a lot more communication. There's nothing wrong with this method because I've done it a lot of times. What I would prefer to do is say, hey, great, thank you, John, the investor. What I'll do is I'll take that $100,000 and I'll pay you 10% on that money over the course of a year, and that balance will balloon at the end of a year. So in that instance, 10% of $100,000 is $10,000. I'd effectively be paying that investor interest only, $833 a month, and then on month 12, that balance would balloon, and not only will I've paid them $10,000 in interest, I gotta pay them $100,000 back. So what's an instance in which that model works? There's actually a few. This would be like if you wanna flip a house, for example, and you wanna get hard money, a lot of the times hard money lenders require you to bring a down payment for them to lend you the money. So you're basically taking investor cash, and you're taking that investor cash and you're using it as a down payment on a hard money loan, and then you're using that hard money loan to flip the house. And then you sell the house, make a profit, pay back the hard money lender, pay back your investor. Of course, you will have paid interest doing this, but theoretically, if you ran the numbers and calculated everything correctly, you will have made a profit, and thus the interest is hopefully nominal compared to the profit that you make. That's one way that you can do this. That's a more common way that I see people utilizing OPM, other people's money. What's really tempting about this model in particular is that the investor gets no equity, no skin in the game, and typically when you work with an investor like this, they're not charging you points, right? So if you go to a hard money lender and you say, hey, I want to flip this $500,000 house, they're gonna say, great, you need to bring 20% down. I mean, there's different options out there, but let's say you need to bring 20% down. We're gonna let you borrow $400,000, but we're gonna charge you 2 points on that. 2 points are 2 percentage points on that $400,000 balance. Is 8,000 bucks. So you'd basically have to pay $8,000 on that loan just to originate it, on top of the 10 to 12% interest that you're paying that hard money lender. Now, in an ideal scenario, best case scenario, you could raise the money and pay an investor 10% debt on $500,000, and you never have to even go to the hard money lender. You can just work straight with an investor, pay them no points, pay them interest. They're happy to make 10% on their money. You sell your home, you make a profit, you guarantee it with the promissory note. There's, talk to a lawyer about how you want to do that. This is the simplest way that you can use OPM, other people's money, to advance like your house flipping business. So now you're probably wondering, how can I use OPM to fund a real estate purchase that you don't necessarily want to flip and you want to hold long term? So there are a couple ways that you can do this, but it's a little tougher because it'll cost you some interest to do it this way. But if you go and you raise money from an investor, it's not necessarily super easy for you to then deposit that money in your account and go buy a home, right? Like most banks are going to see that as a red flag. They're going to say, hey, where'd you get this money from? And then you explain, oh, I borrowed it from this investor. And they're like, oh, you're in debt there. And it's like a bunch of red flags. Typically, the best way way to utilize OPM is hopefully you already have the money. You have the money to qualify for the home, but maybe the home needs $100,000 or $150,000 in renovations, you know, like light cosmetic touch-ups. Maybe you want to install like, you know, pretty expensive amenities like hot tubs, a pickleball court, whatever it is, right? And then maybe you need to also fund the furnishings. So if all of that comes out to, let's say, $150,000, you can go and borrow that from a private money lender, and you'd want to make sure that the monthly payments on that, on top of all of the monthly payments of the mortgage itself, all pencil out in a way that still makes you a profit every single month. This gets pretty advanced. You want to make sure that you're analyzing correctly. You want to make sure that you're analyzing conservatively, because at the end of the day, you have a fiduciary responsibility to pay back all of your lenders. Otherwise, guess what? You're gonna get sued, and no one wants to get sued, right? So anyways, that's one way you can do it. $100,000 or $200,000. You may be asking yourself, do people just have $100,000 to $200,000 of disposable income chilling in their bank accounts? And you'd be surprised. Actually, a decent amount of people do. There's actually this strategy that I've just been hearing more about. It's very funny. It's called HELOC arbitrage, all right? So if you go and you take out a HELOC, a home equity line of credit, which is basically a line of credit against the equity in your home, it gets super interesting because the interest rate on that, let's say, is 4 or 5%. A lot of people just have HELOCs. They have the option to pull money out of their equity, but they don't use them, right? So HELOC arbitrage is basically where someone lends you money from their HELOC. They're paying 5% interest on it, but you're paying them 10% interest. So they're actually making a 5% delta on money that they weren't using anyway. It's free money. It doesn't cost them anything for you to use it. And instead of just letting it sit there and collect dust, they're making 5% without having to actually take money out of their bank accounts. So this is a really popular strategy. I actually have a student that raises private money this way. He'll go to all of his friends and family and cousins and everybody, and he'll say, hey, if you have a HELOC, I'm gonna pay you 10, 11%, and you're gonna make 5% on your money for having done nothing. And in that instance, they own no equity. He has all these short-term rental properties that he's cash flowing on, and he's built like a 10-unit portfolio that's making him tens of thousands of dollars every single month, which is really, really cool and a really smart way to utilize OPM. Woo! All right, are you with me? Was that a lot? I feel like it was a lot. I'm sorry. Watch that one again, and if it didn't make sense the first time, it probably won't make sense the second time because I feel like I was just rambling, but this is really just a little peek behind the curtains of how I've structured debt with so many people out there. And by the way, if you're someone that has like $1, $2, $3, $4, $500,000, $1 million just chilling in your bank account, and you're like, hey man, I'd like to make some interest on my money, it's not doing anything right now, let me know. I'll leave a link in the description down below for how you can invest with me. Before I end this video, I just wanted to quickly cover how you can get private money, right? I think this is the question that a lot of people have. It's like, well, hey, the structures are cool, but how can I actually go out and get private money? I'd like to actually make a video about this if that's interesting to you. Let me know in the comments down below and I'll do a series on raising private money. But one tip that I just wanted to give you was if you're successful in the world of real estate or in the world of short-term rentals, put yourself out there. Make content about it, post about it on Facebook, post about it on your Instagram, post about your successes and your victories, and stay humble. And I promise you that if you're crushing it in whatever niche you're in the real estate world, people will reach out to you. Most of the partners that I had approached me to partner up with me and offered me money before the Raw Built channel even existed. Yeah, that's right. It wasn't like I had this platform and then all of a sudden my friends wanted to partner. I partnered with people before I started a YouTube channel. So if it's possible for me, I know it's possible for you. And the only reason that they ever reached out was because I put myself out there. So if you're on this journey of real estate and you're building an empire, tell people. That's the only way that people will ever find out that you're actually having success in this world, okay? All right, I always say this is like a really random metaphor that I came up with the other day. But let's say, oh man, this is dumb. I'm gonna end it with the dumbest metaphor ever. Let's say that you open up a taco shop. I think you catch what I'm saying. Put yourself out there, make it known what you're doing, and I promise you, money will come and find you. There's this thing going around right now. It's like this idea of an impending global recession. I don't mean to laugh. It's a very serious thing. But I wanted to talk about how I'm shifting my strategy, my business strategy in Airbnb. There's gonna be 5 business models / strategies that I'm gonna be investing in very heavily in the next year or so. And I wanted to share it with you because I just think with everything going on, I think it's fair to step back and look at what's working, what's really working, what's not working, and then basically re-strategize. And hopefully this helps you in your Airbnb journey if you choose to get into Airbnb. And also I'm gonna get into some pretty harsh and tough love at the very end of this video about about investing in Airbnbs in this economy, and you should probably hear it out, rewind and watch it again, because it's important, and I want you to understand the harsh reality that I'm gonna be spitting out your way. So let's get into the 5 business models that I'm gonna be investing in the next 12 to 18 months. And I'm just gonna put it out there, number 5, gonna knock you off your rocker, but you're gonna be like, what? You, Rob? You're gonna be doing this? Yes, I am, all right? But there's a reason for it, so stick with me until the end, okay? So with that, let's get into number 1. Glamping. My tiny house village in Tennessee is back on, baby. You know, people keep asking me about my tiny house village that I've talked about for like literally a year. And the fact of the matter is this, when I left Tennessee about a year ago, I actually had my permits for that tiny house village, but a lot of other projects came into fruition because of me talking about the tiny house village. And so weirdly enough, I pushed pause on the thing that I set out to do because the thing that I set out to do led out to way cooler developments. For example, I'm currently working on permitting a 60-unit glam site in Arizona. It's gonna be a multi-million dollar development, basically the super legitimate permitted version of my prototypes that I started many years ago. You probably remember my tents, my Airstreams and everything like that. They made really good money. We really were scrappy with how we put them together, and they served their purpose and what I was trying to do, which was cash flow and make money. The only way to go legit and scale up is to spend a lot more money on civil engineers and permitting and all that kind of stuff. So from now until the end of 2022, I'm gonna be focusing on building my dome treehouse village in Tennessee, and then in 2023, hopefully, we can start kicking off the groundbreaking of my 60-unit development, name to be determined, but I believe that the #1 asset class within Airbnb that's gonna make the most money are unique stays and glam sites. I've got a lot of students doing it right now. My tiny house still does relatively well. I know a lot of people that are making a lot of money in glamping, and I'm just so frustrated that I can't jump in sooner because I'm going by the book and I'm going through the excruciating red tape to make it happen, and I wanna teach you how to do it. So with that said, glamping is gonna be my #1 focus. All right, second business model strategy that I'm gonna be leaning into are more medium-term rentals. I've done a couple videos on this that really talk about that business model, but medium-term rentals are effectively month-to-month stays, 30-day stays or more. I have a really successful medium-term rental in LA right now, and honestly, I was doing a video series on medium-term rentals, and my medium-term rental had like a 3-week break in it, like a 3-week gap where it hadn't booked out, and I was like, holy crap, like, I'm talking about how much I love medium-term rentals and I'm not even booked, and then I was like, oh my gosh, do I suck? Do I suck at this? And then, like, you know, Airbnb always has a magical way of pulling through for me, but basically right before I launched those videos, I got the biggest reservation I've ever gotten to date. I'll put it right here, and it was for like $33,000, $34,000, and that was just absolutely bonkers. That specific reservation comes out to about $5,650 per month. My mortgage on that property is like $4,200 bucks, but here's the cool thing. I also have my tiny house in the backyard that I also rent as a medium-term rental, and I locked that one in at $2,500 bucks. So total that property grosses $8,000 on what's about $4,800 of expenses. So yeah, it's a little bit more of a set it and forget it strategy. Not really, you still have to like be a host and everything like that, but medium-term rentals are just way more chill than a short-term rental. You host a lot less people, you still cash flow, you still make more than you would with a long-term rental, and if you're like me, you can actually use the property for yourself. Like, I've stayed at my own medium-term rental for like, I think 4 to 6 weeks over the course of the last year, so it's been great. So it's a really great lower management aspect of short-term rentals. So I'm actually looking to pick up one in LA. I'd like to snag a few here in Houston. And I know this is crazy, but I actually want to get a relatively nice medium-term rental in New York. I'm just trying to comp it out a little bit more in New York. It's a little bit tough, but hey, actually, if you have a medium-term rental in New York, send me a message on Instagram and tell me all about it, okay? Anyways, medium-term rentals, great cash flow, low stress, really great entry point for newbies, really great strategy for people that are really busy like me. Okay, strategy number 3, which honestly isn't that new. It's not gonna be that groundbreaking, but national parks. All in all, examining all of my properties that are in or around national parks, they're honestly all doing relatively well. I've got my Joshua Tree tiny house that I talk about. I'm gonna do an update on that, by the way, but it's not making as much money as it was at its height. Bookings did slow down a little bit. I don't even wanna say that. I don't want y'all to get scared. They normalized a lot. I think my first year I grossed 83,000, and I expect I'll probably gross like 60,000 for 2022 is my guess, which seems like a big hit, but that's an infinite cash on cash return for me. And that was a new construction, and I was able to pull all the money out in the cash out refi. So any profit is good money for me, but still making very solid money there. And then even like one of my I wouldn't even say a straggler, but my worst performing national park property, that was my Tennessee house that I lived in for a year. That was never even intended to be an Airbnb because I was gonna build a tiny house village. So the house was there and I lived there, and I planned to make all my money on the tiny house village, which I still do, but just to cover bills, I threw this house on Airbnb, and I think I'm actually still gonna pull off like a 20% cash on cash return
return, there's actually one thing I could do to really increase my revenue, and that would be to build a hot tub. And the reason I haven't done that is because I want this like really epic hot tub that's like cantilevered on a deck, and it's gonna be like a $30,000 project, and not just anyone can build it. It's a whole thing. But basically, even my straggler is getting me a 20% return. So because of that, I'm just such a big believer in national parks. But I actually want to branch out to other national parks like Zion, Yosemite, and Yellowstone, just to name a few. And not a national park at all. I don't even know why I'm saying this in the same category. I actually want to buy a beach house in like Galveston or Crystal Beach too. And that is more of a, hey, if I can cover my bills and have a beach house and like actually be able to have my dream, which is to have jet skis. I've always wanted jet skis. That'd be totally fine. But I actually have talked to a few people that are doing well down there. So maybe even diving into some of those vacation destinations that I say to lean into as well. All right, the fourth strategy, business model that I'm going to be investing in 2022, 2023 is luxury. But hear me out. Right now, I'm looking to get into the Florida luxury market. However, with that said, me getting into luxury, I will not be getting into luxury at market rates. I am going to be lowballing the crap out of luxury sellers right now because I just think that that's where the best deals are going to be this year. Interest rates are going to be high. Not as many people are going to be able to afford a $1.5 million to $2.5 million house. And thus sellers who are serious about offloading that asset because they need to move or because they want to buy a different house will have to accept lower offers. That's just a fact. So yes, I want to get into luxury, but I suspect I'll be making 12 to 20 offers for every one that I get accepted. And there's a couple reasons that I want to focus on luxury specifically. A, I think I'm going to get a big discount, but B, I'm doing it for the cost segregation aspect and the tax benefits of being able to bonus depreciate that asset, basically slice and dice my tax bill. So I want to get into more high dollar properties. I bought one in Scottsdale last year. That one is a good example of what I'm talking about. It was listed at like 3.4 or 3.5, can't remember, and I think we offered like 3 million. Then they accepted 3.25 million, but they gave us $75,000 in seller credits. So that felt like a pretty good deal at the time. That one we bought right at the beginning of the slow season, and we've been really riding out the slow season. So I'm excited for January to come around, but from January to May, it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good, especially because the Super Bowl is in Scottsdale this year. So I'm still feeling pretty good about luxury, but it's gotta be the price that I demand. This is not a model that I really recommend for any newbie investor. I bought this Scottsdale property. I can cover the $17,500 mortgage when I need to. I'm not worried about it. This is not something I'd ever want for the novice or even like the middle tier investor. You should really only be buying properties when you're like incredibly experienced. So don't hear this and be like, Rob said I should go buy a $3 million house. Do not do that. Do not do that. You're probably not ready for it. No offense.
Son of a bitch. Wow. Okay.
Okay. All right. Last one. Number 5. All right. Just hear me out. The business strategy number 5 that I'm going to be getting into in the recession in the next year, 12 to 18 months, is rental arbitrage. Now, I know I said I would never do it. I made a whole video about why you should never do rental arbitrage, and I've had some time to reflect. And so basically, here was my argument. Rental arbitrage is all about cash flow, but there's no appreciation. It's a temporary business. When your lease is over, your business is over, and then you're stuck with all this furniture that you have to sell or give away at a loss. Whereas when you buy property, you actually own that property, you build equity and you build wealth that way. That is my genuine point of view there. However, a lot of you wrote in the comments like, hey Rob, I understand what you were saying about owning property, but I don't have money to own property and I really want to do this, and I love your channel and I love learning from you, but I can't actually apply what I've learned from you to my own situation. And then some people were like, oh, it's easy for you to say you have money, you can buy houses. And then the nail on the coffin was when some of my host camp students actually commented on the video and they were like, hey Rob, I'm a student of yours and I need more money. I want to make more money, and I would really appreciate if you could give some thought to teaching this because I think it would really help me. So while I don't necessarily condone going all in on the rental arbitrage strategy, I do want to try it and I want to master it and I want to learn it and I want to teach it to y'all the Rob Built way. There's a lot of other channels of people that are way more experienced about it. Go watch Airbnb Automated, I guess. It's like, he knows what he's doing. He's done it at scale. It's not my wheelhouse, but I do want to teach people how to get started in real estate with no money. I got a lot of content coming down the pipeline that will also teach you how to do that, but I recognize that rental arbitrage is a stepping stone for a lot of you. So what I'm gonna try to do is basically take you through the journey of starting a rental arbitrage business and then basically scaling that into owning your first property. And I think if everyone at home and then my students can commit to taking my advice on doing the rental arbitrage thing, but taking all that money and not using it to build like a 1,000 unit rental
arbitrage business, but to use it to build a real estate portfolio. I'm gonna teach you how to do it, and I'm actually taking on students in host camp, and I'm gonna work with them, and I'm gonna guide them through their first rental arbitrage deals. And I'm kind of excited about it because it's bringing me back to my days when I got started on Airbnb, when it was like really new and exciting, and rental arbitrage is how I started, and so I'm going back to my roots basically. And I think it's a really good model for the recession, and you know, for a lot of people that just are super scared of the 6 to 8% interest rates and really don't want to leverage themselves to their eyeballs in debt, which is super fair. Signing a lease is a lot lower stakes and a lot less scarier than signing the mortgage papers. So basically I'm gonna do some rental arbitrage. I don't wanna be too cavalier about this, okay? The 5 business models, first of all, they all require work. I think a lot of people were spoiled. I think over the last 3 or 4 years, super easy to make money on Airbnb, no matter what your experience, no matter what your background was, and hopefully I helped people do that. But we're going into the time where the dabbler, the casual investors, the people that are mailing it in, I just don't think that they're gonna survive. I think we're gonna be seeing a lot of people exit the Airbnb industry. For better or for worse, I'm not really sure. But at the end of the day, we're gonna have to bust our asses a lot more than we were over the last 5 years. And that's okay, and I really do stand by my idiom here. Can I call it an idiom? Airbnb isn't hard, but it is hard work. And so unless you're actually willing to commit, go all in, give like passion to this, like give your time and effort, lose sleep over it, and really just be on your phone and be ready to answer guests and be ready to provide them good experiences and bend over backwards. Unless you're willing to do that for the next 12 to 18 months, then simply speaking, this is not the business for you. All right, so I'm gonna be hammering you on this moving forward, because as much as I strive to make Airbnb and real estate approachable to the everyday investor, I'll always stand by that. I really want anyone who actually watches this channel and takes action and starts an Airbnb business to be successful. And so that just means that I have to talk to a much smaller group of people, the people that are serious about this, because times are getting serious. All right, so I don't know if I doubt that's motivational, but hopefully it's a little bit of tough love, and we can use a little bit of that every so often. And that's how I'm investing in Airbnb. And yeah, the recession is gonna be hard for a lot of people, and then for some people it's gonna be really great. So which one of those groups you fall in, I don't know, but I'm gonna do my best to help you regardless of what you decide. See, I want to riff on this. I like a good intro riff. You like a good riff. You want me to riff? All right, give me a word. Give me a one-word suggestion and go. No, okay. Ma'am, can I take you out? No. Oh,
I'll start the intro that way.
I think I would like a barbacoa taco. Do you think you could change my flat tire? Wait, how? Who, me? Yes, you. What? No, could it be? Oh yeah, oh yeah.
See how you edit this together. I won't. You just have I just gave you the greatest intro footage. I don't even know what that ended up being. Was that a funny intro? Let me know, because Caleb hated it the entire time, but I can already tell. It's probably the best intro that's ever been on the Rob Built channel. Hello everybody, my name is Rob. Welcome back to the Rob Built channel. I feel like I haven't introed a YouTube video the old way in so long. Today we're gonna be talking about medium-term rentals, also known as mid-term rentals, just basically not quite short-term rentals and not quite long-term rentals, but just right in between both of those, a little sandwich in between both of the different types of rental asset classes. So let's go back to the beginning here and talk about how I found myself switching from short-term rentals to medium-term rentals. When I built my tiny house in Los Angeles, California, I expected that to be a short-term rental for its entire life, because obviously I'm an Airbnb guy. Then the pandemic hit and I switched it to a medium-term rental sort of by accident. I didn't really want a lot of people staying at my house during that time. Travel nurses needed a place to stay, and so for a year and a half, it was thriving as a medium-term rental. Then when the dust started to settle a bit, I went back to the short-term rental strategy, and it was going super well. I was making really great money. But it was around this time that LA really started enforcing the short-term rental ordinances that they had put in place over the last year or so, which basically really only allowed me to Airbnb my tiny house for 180 days out of the year. And then if I wanted to Airbnb it past that, I'd have to pay like 850 bucks to get an extended stay permit, well, which is honestly all doable. However, because I'm not a resident of LA anymore, I don't have an LA license, and so permitting there for me has just been more work than I've been wanting to deal with. So I found myself moving back to medium-term rentals on Airbnb because it started making more and more sense for me. So what exactly is a medium-term rental? So let's talk about this. For me, a medium-term rental is a stay that is a minimum of 30 days, but it typically ends up being less than 12 months. It's usually month-to-month rentals, and a lot of the time those month-to-month leases can average anywhere from 1 to 3 months. Now on top of the length of stay here, the other component of a medium-term rental is that you fully furnish it as you would an Airbnb. Now the way that medium-term rentals differ from your traditional short-term rentals is that a short-term rental technically by definition is a stay between 1 and 30 days. And then a long
long-term rental is typically a lease that is 9 to 12 months, or it can even be longer than that. The difference here is that you have a tenant in place that furnishes the place themselves and they pay all of their utilities. The short-term rental, you pay all the utilities, you furnish it. Same thing with the medium-term rental. And then long-term rentals are sort of their own niche and just a whole different beast. I think that mid-term rentals are still very much in the heart of short-term rentals, which is why I really classify these together. And I think that they can work in tandem with each other super well. For example, let's say that you buy an Airbnb in a highly seasonal place like a beach. Typically with a beach short-term rental, you're gonna make like 80 to 90% of your income from the months of May to August. And then from September to April, it can be a dead zone and you won't be making a lot of money on short-term rentals, and you'd be lucky to break even a lot of the months. So that's why when you have a seasonal Airbnb and you do make most of your money in those 4 months, you wanna stash as much of it as you can away for the months that you aren't gonna be producing a lot of income. This is where the medium-term rental strategy really comes into play. Because a very common strategy, especially in beach markets, is that maybe you have a thriving Airbnb for 4 months out of the year, but then the other 8 months out of the year, you rent it to snowbirds, hopefully at a profit, but at least at a break even, so that you're able to cover all of your expenses during the downtimes. And that right there is a very perfect scenario of how midterm rentals and short-term rentals can be symbiotic together. But if you really want, you can eliminate the short-term rental strategy altogether and just go all in on medium-term rentals, which is what I do with my LA properties. And honestly, I'm loving this specific niche so much more these days for so many reasons. For one, you have way less guests to deal with. On average, I'm hosting between 4 to, let's say, 8 guests per month on any given short-term rental strategy. However, with a medium-term rental, I'm just hosting 1 set of guests per month, and a lot of the times, these guests are staying for more than 1 month. On average, my medium-term rental stays are anywhere from 2 to 3 months. So let's say that my average is 2 months, just to keep it easy. That means that I'm really only dealing with 6 sets of guests throughout the year, which is a lot less than a typical short-term rental stay. So the reason I like this is because it's a lot easier to deal with 6 sets of people throughout the year versus 72 sets of people if I were just averaging 6 days per month on any given Airbnb. You can imagine keeping up with 6 people is a lot easier, right? But also there's this notion with the medium-term rental, when you're staying there for 30 days at a time or 60 days or 90 days, the people sort of feel like it's their home and they live in it, right? And so they feel a lot less entitled to bug you about small stuff than a Airbnb guest might. If small things start to happen around the home, or if they run out of supplies or whatever, because they live there and they accept that that's their home for a couple of months at a time, they really just aren't quite as high maintenance as a short-term rental guest who feel like they're getting a 5-star hotel experience and have to bring every little thing up to your attention. Now, I'm not saying I don't like to provide a good experience for these guests, but what I am saying is that when I'm dealing with a small group of people every single year and they're not really bothering me very much throughout that year, it's a good thing. It's way less gray hairs than the 72 groups of people provide me every single year. And this is also a really good solution for people that do have 9-to-5 jobs and they're scared of going right into short-term rentals, because there is that perception with short-term rentals that you're gonna be managing it 30 hours a week and you can't work a full-time job and this and that. All that stuff is not true. You can automate a lot of your short-term rental business. I talk about it on the channel quite a bit. However, if you are nervous about hopping straight into short-term rentals, starting out with a medium-term rental is actually a really great strategy because it's so much easier to manage because you're just not dealing with turns and cleans several times a week. So if that's one of your bigger fears, then medium-term rentals are an obvious solution for a way to dip your toes into the short-term rental game. And lastly, and perhaps the most important and my favorite reason that I like medium-term rentals is that they get around short-term rental laws. So remember, when I said that medium-term rentals are typically 30 days or more, that is no longer classified as a short-term rental. That's actually just classified basically as a long-term rental. So any short-term rental laws or regulations that might be put into place and outlaw you from Airbnb-ing your house don't really apply on the medium-term rental side of things, which is exactly why I converted my Los Angeles places to medium-term rentals, because I'm still able to rent them on the Airbnb platform, but I just set my minimum to 30 days at a time. So if you bought an Airbnb before and you've been regulated out of the city, or you want to buy in a city and your biggest reason for not getting into Airbnb is regulation, medium-term rentals are always a very solid backup plan. I always say that when you're analyzing a short-term rental, you should have a backup plan to make it a long-term rental in the case that, you know, hits the fan, right? But nowadays, my point of view on that is changing pretty rapidly, and I would say any short-term rental investment that you're thinking about making should work as a medium-term rental. That way, if you get regulated, you always have that backup plan. As a matter of fact, this is why one of my students, her name is Vita, found herself in the medium-term rental game. So why did you decide to go the medium-term rental route?
Well, in the Anaheim house in Anaheim, California, we wanted to make this a vacation rental, but Anaheim had banned short-term rentals. They were not allowing more new short-term rentals to get permitted. So we made it a long-term rental. And then I found you, Rob, and found out that there was such a thing called midterm rentals and decided to move forward with that. So after the lease, we went forward with that.
So given that you're not doing the short-term stays and charging a lot of money, you know, for 1 to 7 night stays, is medium-term rental a profitable way to get into the Airbnb game?
Yes, it is. I started renting for $6,000 a month and I wasn't sure about that. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a lot of money, but it worked.
Per month, what is your gross?
$7,000 a month. That's what we're listed for.
How did it all pan out? Like, have you been liking the medium-term rental route?
I do like the medium-term rental route because it just seems less stressful.
Nice. Okay, can I get a digital high five here? Thank you so much. That's awesome. Host camp high five. Woo!
You know I have misophonia. I have misophonia. It's a medical condition. I cringe at the sound of others eating. Leave that in. Leave that in. That's a funny transition, Steve. By the way, if you're interested in getting into the short-term rental game or the medium-term rental game after watching this video and you just don't really know where to start, or you really want to scale up your Airbnb business and learn everything there is to know about being a successful short-term rental or medium-term rental host, consider booking a free call with my team over at hostcamp.com. The HostCamp mentorship program hosts over 100 calls every single year, ranging from design to automation to analysis and everything in between. So if you want to learn how to do this whole Airbnb thing directly from me, book a free call with my team over at hostcamp.com. Also, if you're a host camper, say what's up in the comments. So anyways, let's get back into it. There's so many reasons why I'm really loving medium-term rentals right now. So how much money can you actually make with the medium-term rental? There's a few different ways to calculate this, but typically what I do, so I find what I want to make with the short-term rental, and I'll discount that anywhere from 30 to 50%. So then if I would typically make $5,000 on a short-term rental, then at minimum, I would be making $2,500 as a mid-term rental, and I'm using my tiny house as an example here, and on a long-term rental, I'd be making anywhere from 13 to maybe like $1,800 a month. It really just varies. On the scale, typically from a profitability standpoint, there's long-term rentals, then medium-term rentals, and of course, short-term rentals. And I think this really varies based on how much work you're putting into it. Long-term rentals are typically the least amount of work. Mid-term rentals are a little bit more work than that. And then short-term rentals, of course, not completely passive, although you can automate a lot of that business, but it's obviously the most amount of work out of all three. But there's a few ways to analyze a deal and calculate how much money you can make on a medium-term rental. So if you're looking to get into the medium-term rental game, how does one comp out how much you're gonna make every month?
There are other midterm rentals that are in the area. So what I did is I looked on Furnish Finders, and then on Airbnb, I did my, comping on Airbnb as well. And of course, it does great for short-term rentals if I could do that. You can also look for those 30-day rentals. And so I looked at that, saw how much they were charging per night, and thought, okay, and then I was told to double my long-term rent. So that came out to about $6,000.
So how much money are you making with your medium-term rental right now?
We're profiting about $3,400 a month.
Crazy. She just said that she's making $3,400 a month in profit on her medium-term rental. $3,400 bucks. Typical long-term rentals, you're hoping for like $100 to $500 of cash flow. So the fact that you can make over $3,000 a month on medium-term rentals already starts to show how much potential it has. When you compare it to long-term rentals, obviously, it's gonna make more money there, but even short-term rentals. And that's it. Just a cool, easy 3-hour plus video that teaches you everything you need to know about starting, optimizing. Sorry, I've been watching this for 3 hours. I'm out of my mind here. I've been watching this along with you as you watched it. I'm sure that was just easy to sit through, watching me and all my weird jokes and all of our weird edits. Thank you very much, Caleb. But I hope you learned something, and I hope you heard my story, and I hope it inspired you to think, hey, maybe I can do this too, because I know that you can. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I have devoted years of my life to putting out free content for those of you that want to get into this game, because I genuinely want this for other people. This type of content did not exist when I started 7 years ago, and I wish it did. But here's the good news. I learned the hard way so that you could learn the easy way. And I hope I've made this easy and digestible for you. I appreciate it if you made it to the very end. Honestly, that really does mean the world to me that you stuck with me for more than 3 hours. And if you did, that makes you a super fan. Let me know in the comments down below. Go down to the comments and comment super fan so I know who you are, and I will go and I will respond to every single one of you as a token of my gratitude for hanging with me. So go do the short-term rental thing. You got this. I know you can do it. Stop being scared. Take action. Actually, it's fine to be a little scared. You should be a little scared, but still take the action. And if you do, your Airbnb dreams will come true. All right? Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next episode of Raw Built. Oh, I knocked over a water bottle. See ya. Bye.